morning. On behalf of Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead, the Commission, Manager Fuentes, and staff, welcome to the business meeting of the City Commission of the City of Truth and Consequences. It is now 9:01 on March 14th. If you have any instrument that will make sounds, beeps, buzzers, dings, please shut that down. We'd appreciate it. This is a great way to start a business meeting, by having an opening ceremony of a returning commissioner being sworn in and a new commissioner being sworn in. So at the present time, I'm going to turn the floor over to the Honorable Judge Beatrice Sanders.
County of Sierra, State of New Mexico. Sanders A. Washington, having been appointed to the position 1 for the State of New Mexico to expire on March 2022 in the County of Sierra, State of New Mexico. Do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution and the laws of the State of New Mexico. Do solemnly swear to support the Constitution and the laws of the State of New Mexico and the Constitution and laws. Can you start over? Yes, start over. Okay. All right. In the County of Sierra, State of New Mexico. In the County of Sierra, State of New Mexico. Do solemnly swear. Do solemnly swear. That I will support the Constitution of the United States. That I will support the Constitution of the United States. The Constitution and the laws of the State of New Mexico. The Constitution and the laws of the State of New Mexico. And faithfully and impartially. And faithfully and impartially. Discharge the duties of said office. Discharge the duties of said office. To the best of my ability. To the best of my ability. So help me God. So help me God. And we have it for you. Congratulations. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Raise your right hand. I, Paul Baca, having been duly elected or appointed as position 3, City Commissioner. Okay, I, Paul Baca, having been duly elected or appointed. Okay.
I'm sorry.
I, Paul A. Baca, having been duly elected or appointed as position 3 City Commissioner for a term to expire March 2022 in the County of Sierra, State of New Mexico, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution and the laws of the State of New Mexico, and faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of said office to the best of my ability. So help me God. Congratulations.
Thank you, Judge. Madam Clerk, we have roll call.
Honorable Steve Green.
Here.
Honorable Sandra Whitehead. Here. Honorable Kathy Clark.
Here.
Honorable Ralph Ischler.
Here.
Honorable Paul Baca.
Here.
Mr. Mayor, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The next item is item 2, silent meditation. As you're aware, that students all over our country, in honor of those students and teachers who lost their lives in Parkland, Florida, are going to be silent for 17 minutes. And I would just like you to keep their families, them and their loved ones in your hearts and minds. It could have happened anywhere. Thank you. The next item is the pledge. Commissioner Baca, could you please lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The next item is the approval of the agenda. When we go for the approval, I would like a motion that deletes I-7, which is the appointment of the Main Street through the Consequences City Representative. I'd like that deleted because the state in the Main Street program is not allowing any elected official to serve on a nonprofit board. And I would like to move number H, which is unfinished business plan expansion of the transit service to Sierra County, up after number E. I will stand for that motion.
Mayor, I'll make that motion as you just related.
Thank you. I have a motion by Commissioner Hessler. I need a second.
I second that
Second by Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead. Any further discussion?
Mayor, can you explain to me why it's just Main Street and the rest of these wouldn't be considered nonprofit groups also?
Because the number 7 is controlled by the State Economic Development Department, which Main Street is run under, and they have had a problem with elected officials serving on the board because they felt that there was a double voice where an elected official would be on a Main Street board and then they would come as a city commissioner and vote for funds for that board. So to keep things clean, they have been pushing not to have elected officials on that, and that's what this was going to be about. I was the last elected official to be there. The only reason I finished out my second term of office there as a board member was because it expired in 2 months.
So wouldn't that be the same thing for the tourism board? No? Okay.
Unless the state
Unless the state mandates it.
mandates it.
Thank you.
You're entirely welcome. So I have a motion. Did we get a second?
Yes, I
Second. Okay. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you. The next item is canvass of election returns. City Clerk.
Morning, Mayor, Commissioners. As you know, the regular election was held on March 6th. The canvass was done Thursday, March 8th, with Judge Matthew Reynolds, who served on the canvassing board with me, and our deputy clerk assisting. The official canvass is required to be included in the minutes book. Therefore, we put it on the agenda so that we could do that portion. And the results confirm the following were elected. Position 1, 4-year term, Sandra Whitehead. And position 3, 4-year term, Paul Baca. So there's no action required on this. It will be made an official part of the minutes. And I would like to officially thank my staff and all those who worked so hard to help us get through another successful election. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I guess you should probably stay there. The next item is the reorganization, selection of mayor and mayor pro tem. You have to pick up the next piece of paper. I could deliver it to you, you know.
Sorry about that, I grabbed the wrong ones. According to state statute, as listed in your agenda packet, at the first meeting of the new commission after each regular election or as soon thereafter as practical, this being the first meeting. The commissioners shall select one of their members as the mayor to act for 2 years or until a successor is selected and qualified. Relating to appointing the mayor pro tem as well during the mayor's absence or disability, the mayor pro tem shall serve in the position of mayor. With that, the other regulations are in, and we recommend that you make nominations for a member to serve as mayor and call for a vote in the order they were nominated, and then make nominations for a member to serve as mayor pro tem.
Thank you. I will stand for nominations for the position of mayor of the City of Truth and Consequences.
Mayor, I'd like to renominate Steve Green as mayor for the City of Truth and Consequences.
I have a nomination by Commissioner Clark. Is there a second in the House?
You have a second, Mayor?
I have a second by Commissioner Hessler. Are there any other nominations? Seeing none, I will close the nomination process and proceed for a vote. All those in favor of the election of Steve Green for mayor of the City of Truth and Consequences, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
It carries. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. That's, if I might just take this one moment. It is truly an honor, I feel. When I was growing up, one of the tenets to live my life was taught to me by my father. And my father taught me that you're only as good as your last cup of coffee. So my pledge to the citizens of Truth and Consequences is to do my very best to represent you, to represent this commission and every member of this commission, the city manager, and the staff of the City of Truth and Consequences to the best of my ability. And I thank you for your confidence, your support, and I accept the honor. Thank you. I now stand for position of Mayor Pro Tem. We'll need some nominations.
Mayor, if I may?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to nominate Mayor Pro Tem Sandra Whitehead to continue in that position as Mayor Pro Tem. I enjoy working with her, and I enjoy her leadership, and I hope that she would consider continuing that capacity.
I have a nomination. I would like to second that nomination. Please. Is there any further discussion? Are there any other nominations for Mayor Pro Tem? Seeing none, I close the nomination process. All those in favor of Mayor Pro Tem Sandy Whitehead continuing in that capacity, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carries. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, I thank you for that vote of confidence, and I again too will serve the community as the best as I have done, and hopefully you will all trust in me, and thank you.
Okay. Next item is number C, comments from the public. 3-minute rule. If you have anything you want to make part of the permanent record to the committee, please, to the commission, please put it in the black box. State your name, and the floor is yours.
Randy Ashbaugh, local resident, Poplar Street. First of all, I'd like to congratulate Paul. I've known Paul almost, if not all of his life. He's worked hard even as a child, changing tires at his dad's place, washing cars, just taking care of business. He was like just a regular human adult working with his dad. I've known Sandy. I can't remember not knowing Sandy. I want to congratulate you, Sandy, on your victory. I only have a couple things to say. Common sense and no favoritism. This whole town needs to be looked at. I think the downtown has got a lot of favoritism, and I think the whole community, all the way around the downtown, needs to be looked at too, very hard, especially the golf course. We need to get back to block and tackling. We need to work on our infrastructure, our roads, our sewer, our water especially. We need a strong police department. We need very good code enforcement. I really hate to see Robbie leave. I think he was an asset to the community. And we need to bring back our winter visitors. We need to bring back our retiring people that we used to get by the droves. We're not getting our winter visitors like we used to because I don't think we're catering to them. The retirement is a huge industry now because of the baby boomers. They're all going to Arizona, different places. We're not even coming close to getting our fair share. We need to make an all-out attack on repairing and fixing our golf course. Can you imagine what would happen if the city of Elephant Butte hadn't stepped in and helped take over the golf course out there? The land values in all of Elephant Butte would have gone through the floor. Those multi-million-dollar houses out there would have been multi-100,000. And we're having our houses in Tier C. There's not a single new house under construction in the city limits. I've never seen this in my life, last 2 or 3 years. We need to promote county-wide tourism. The city needs to get with Elephant Butte, the village, the county, and promote our lake, promote our hunting, fishing, our hot mineral water, all the assets we have in this county, which are many, and stop the bad decisions and the money waste. I think we really need to look at the sidewalks on South Broadway and where our real cost was. I think we've got a big deficit. Not being negative all the time, I want to thank the commission that the construction inside the city has been so poor. I've been forced to seek work outside. Thank you for the 2 very lucrative jobs I've got in Las Cruces. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hochfeld. Mr. Trevino?
Just a second. Evelyn Trujillo, 506 West 3rd Street. Thank you for allowing me to speak today, and congratulations to both of you for being on board. And I'd like to talk about 3 topics today. One is number E under the agenda. It's the audit report for this city. We've had continually findings on the same issues over and over every year. I don't think this commission is spending enough time going over with city staff what's going to be done so that we don't have these findings reoccur. Why don't you all have a special meeting to discuss the very findings of the audit, just like we're having now, but only with those audit findings? They're pretty damning, basically. We still don't have asset control since I got here, 2009, I think it was. There was a large leak on Veeder Street with the sewer. I don't know if the city commissioners have gone over there and looked at that, but it's pretty bad. It's water in some areas was over a foot deep. This is sewer. Unfortunately, part of that was on my sister's property. I want to know what the city is going to do to remediate that. It wasn't the city's fault. It was the contractors, I understand. But something's got to be done. Those pathogens stay in the ground. I don't know what has to be done, but something should be. I hope one of you report on that today. The departments, you all are hiring a new planner for the city. And by the way, that was my background. I got a master's in planning. I'm very concerned about one issue regarding that position. And again, the commission didn't deal with this 3 years ago, I think, when I brought it up with Sledham. You don't have a legally established department of community development. Departments within the city, look at your ordinances, I've sent them to all of you, are to be first made needed or deemed needed by the city commission. That was never done. It's a very important point. Do you really need a Department of Community Development? What does this ordinance say about how a Department of Community Development is established? You haven't legally established that department. So just go back over your bases and establish it. I mean, it's not that difficult. You all have to say it's needed, and then you have to think about what positions you want to have fill those positions. I love what Randy was saying about all the things that need to get done. We need to have another priority session to get what should be done in the city and have citizens' input. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak.
Thank you. Anyone else like to address the commission? Going once, going... I knew that, Mr. Fenton.
You knew that in advance, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm here, I only have 3 minutes, so I won't do too much of the niceties that I would have done had I been sitting in your seats. But the issues that I was going to raise still need to be raised. The first one, of course, is the replacement of Mr. Fuentes. That's an ongoing situation, and it needs to be seriously looked at. And there are members of this board who have agreed with me on it, and I think that it's time, it's more than time that that is taken care of. The other thing that is important is that since you are representing the people, and you are all sworn to do so, it's necessary for you to know what the people have to say. In that regard, these meetings must be returned to the evenings where the working people of this community and other people who are interested can come and give their input. It makes no sense to be paying city employees to sit here at these meetings while the working people who actually work for dollars, that pay the taxes, are not allowed to come because their employers will not pay them or transport them to these meetings. Think about that one very, very diligently, please. These need to go back to the evenings. You represent the people. The business of the city is the business, not of the city commission. It's the business of the people. And if you don't get the consensus of the people, you know what happens, as recently happened with a very expensive armory debacle. Don't do it again. But in order to prevent that, you need to listen to the people, and you have to make them available to you to listen. Please take this under consideration very seriously. And lastly, I just got some very interesting appraisals on our Lee Bell Johnson Center and the Chamber building, showing that we are foregoing about $21,000 a year in rents for those facilities, and no one has showed 10 cents worth of income from their getting free rents, which I believe are illegal under our state constitution, which you all swore to uphold. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Fenton. Anyone else like to address the commission?
Hang on a second, please.
Okay, well, someone,
I can't give you 8 minutes, but hang on. Come on.
I could use it. Congratulations, Paul.
There we go. I apologize. We are back online.
you are on.
Oh, okay. Stanley Rickert, Cary Street here in TRC. And I'm here to talk about zoning enforcement. And Mr. Ashball touched on it, but I want to bring it forward. The state statutes are about zoning regulations have to have more input into this city. It's not being followed. Anyway, to make a long story short, the ordinance, rules, and regulations, together with the officially adopted or district zoning map of the county or municipal zoning authority, shall be filed in the respective offices of the county clerk or municipal clerk, and shall be available for examination by any citizen. Yes, there's certain districts that are not being considered for certain things, and I've got a problem with my neighbor having his business and starting another business in a residential area. It's a commercial business he's running. It's a commercial business he wants to run. he has no permits for either, right? He does have a license, but it has not been advised by the planning and zoning, you know, for his business to go ahead with. Anyhow, it says here, you are to prevent any illegal act, conduct business or conduct businesses or use in, about, or such premises. So why is this allowed to be going on? It has not been dealt with in a manner that he needs to, you know, been 4 years he's bought that property. He's been running his business and trying to expand it and bring it up higher. So, you know, there's more traffic, there's more problems, there's more nuisance, there's just so much going on over there that he's getting away with, and nobody has done anything about it. And I'd like to know why this is going on, okay? And I'd like to see something, you know, done. It's about time, you know. This situation is getting way out of hand, and it's making, you know, us look like, you know, we're not getting the respect we need to have, all right? And I appreciate it. Thank you for your time, and congratulations again, Paul, and Ms. Whitehead.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Eastfeld.
Okay. Good morning. Visuals are always helpful. My name is Sharon Eastfold. I reside at 1301 North Silver. That's okay, Ron, I got it. Thank you, hon. I wanted to thank you all for passing that criminal trespass ordinance last month. That was very crucial for what we're trying to do. As we continue to gain support for the Chihuahuan Desert Conservancy, this is new to you all, but we can fill you in later. We are always fearful of what we might find when we tour supporters. One of the major points of access for the criminal activity is this 15 acres property right here. This big chunk right here. This is True Value Hardware, and it's this road we're talking about right here. So, last month, the police collected hypodermic needles and at the base of a tri-state power line pole that's covered with gang graffiti. We learned that the police have recovered stolen cars there. We have witnessed other criminal activities from this access point. My husband and I have suggested to the Joint Power Commission chair that we establish a working group to search for solutions regarding this 15 acres. We have also offered to take JPC members on walking tours so they can see the problems for themselves. We respectfully request that the new appointees to the JPC make sure that the full JPC Commission is informed in order to act and stop this criminal trespass. We look forward to working with the new appointees to the JPC from this commission, and please contact us as you move forward with that. Thank you so much. I'm going to leave this up here. You know my husband's got something to say, too.
I think this is called tag team 3-minute public comment. Mr. Eastfeld, welcome back.
Members of the commission, yes, I'm the husband. And I've been so introduced. Oh, are you Sharon Eastfold's husband? Oh, yes. Thank you for having this meeting. We very much appreciate your open form of government and good participation, very intelligent statements from the public coming to you. I think it's excellent. You don't always find that in government, so it's kind of a rarity. We have been trying to work with our neighbors, property owners, easement holders, in getting good boundaries that are defensible for the Conservancy and working out any needed communication and cooperation. And we've had excellent response. One owner, the Turtleback Mountain Properties, is meeting with his investors to explore actually donating an acre and a half to us to make it easier for us to fence our boundary down in the base of Falcon Canyon by the rodeo grounds. We're going out there this afternoon with Travis Atwell to look at a recent ATV event that came very close to our property, but according to Travis, did not follow the same course as the poker run did November 11th, right through our property and through the archaeological site. So some progress is being made. It sounds like they have noticed the no trespassing signs, at least we hope they have. But we continue to be fearful of taking groups out there because we cannot guarantee their safety. We have met belligerent individuals. We have met individuals committing criminal acts. The police have informed us of other activities they have witnessed. Some citations have been issued. I want to commend Chief Apodaca and Lieutenant Baker and their department, particularly Officer Peru, Alpha Diva Peru, who is just a really straight-ahead, right-on enforcement officer. You really have a gem in Officer Peru. So we have a good police department to work with, we feel, and we feel we can count on you, but they can't be out there 24/7, and we can't either. And so we need to close off these access points that are allowing criminal trespass. The main one from Smith Avenue, which is easy peasy lemon easy, is right there by Smith Hardware. You just leave the pavement and you drive right through the JPC property, County of Sierra. I really don't understand the ownership on that. But a gate right there at Smith Avenue is the place to cut it off. It's very easy. You know, if we could get permission from whoever the owner is, or owners, we would pay for the gate ourselves just to get it done. So we look forward to working with the new appointees to the JPC to see to it that this criminal trespass is stopped. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Eastville. Anyone else who would like, sir? Mr. Eastville, maybe we should, okay, thank you. Ms. Marino.
Good morning, Mayor, City Commissioners. I'm here on behalf of Main Street Truth or Consequences. Just informing you about two things we've finished up. The first being the retaining wall. We refurbished that wall. It's on the north end, or the north side of Main Street, at the cross section of Foch Street. We worked with the Youth Conservation Corps on that and some local volunteers, so it looks much better, and we've sealed in some of those cracks. Also, we just finished up Casino Night. It was a joint effort between the Elephant Butte Chamber of Commerce, the Chamber of Commerce of Truth or Consequences in Sierra County, and Main Street. And it was our first time working all together, and it was a really great collaboration. We look forward to working with those entities again. And upcoming May 11th through 13th, we have the Hot Springs Festival, and so we're working on that right now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else like to address the commission? Ms. Odette?
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for allowing us to have public comment. My comment has to do with item H1. It's listed as unfinished business, but it involves transit services. We finished that, so it should be listed as new business. And I'm suggesting you change that. I still feel like I have to comment on it since I'm involved in transit in this town. They aren't offering what we need, and their only reason for coming here appears to be that they lost a significant portion of their grant and they want us to make it up for them. The problem is that they're asking us to pay too much money. This was the problem with when we voted it down 2-1 the last time we had a vote on this. So it would be better if they came to us and got some information about what we need before they start suggesting that we pay money for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to address the commission? Seeing none, I will close this portion of public comment. I'm just going to go off script for literally 20 seconds. I just want to thank all those who did run in this past election. That's impressive that people want to serve their fellow citizens, serve the community. There are 3 commissioners who will stand or not stand for re-election in 2 years. I encourage you to stay involved. There are city boards that you can serve on, city advisory boards, and just keep on staying engaged to position yourself to run again in 2 years. So thank you for those who did run. Next item is number D, response to public comment. Is there any response to public comment from my commissioners? Yes, sir. Commissioner Heschler.
Yeah, I'd like to make a response regarding the recent audit report. I don't think anything could be more wrong. I believe this audit report was actually the best audit report we've had in a long time. There have been issues that have been cleaned up that have been out there for over 10 years, major issues that have been dealt with. And if you've listened to some of the reports to the commission over the last few weeks, you'd understand that things have been really worked out at the utility office, and I appreciate all the efforts that have been done at the administrative level in the administrative offices. We're dealing with stuff that's been handed to us for over 10 years, and I commend the staff and Manager Fuentes for dealing with those issues and taking some of those major issues off the table. I understand it wasn't perfect. I understand there's some issues that we still need to deal with, but I, for one, commend you for your efforts. Thank you very much.
Here, here. Second that. Any other response to public comments? Seeing none, they were... Oh, I beg your pardon. Sorry. I turned to my right. I didn't think you were on the roll. Go ahead, Commissioner Heschler.
Yes, sir, Mayor. The last meeting, a citizen made unsubstantiated accusations regarding City Manager Fuentes. I would hope our commission would rise to the defense of our city manager if future unsubstantiated allegations are made to him or any of our commission or city employees. If there is evidence of malfeasance by any official, there are methods and manners to properly handle these situations that don't involve the rumor mill or taking cheap shots at a person's integrity. Thank you.
Thank you. And he's not here, but I'd just like to respond, if he was here, to Ron Prochoruk, who questioned why we weren't having a town hall meeting like we always have. And our answer is we were waiting for the election results to see that the new commission was seated. And if you'll take a look on the agenda, I-8 is discussion action public forum. So that was the reason that we didn't have it before the election process. The next item is item E, presentation of the fiscal year 2016-2017 audit. Our presenter is Chris Garner, who is a CPA with the firm of Patillo, Brown and Hill, LLP. Welcome back, Chris.
Thank you, Mayor and Commission. What I have here is, and hopefully, do you all have a copy of the presentation? Okay, good. This is a kind of a highlights from our exit conference that we had. We as auditors have required communication that we are charged in giving those that are charged with governance, so in this case the commission, and this is kind of some of the highlights that we went over at the exit conference. So if you go to the first slide, discussion about what our responsibilities as your auditors are. There's a lot of misconceptions about what people think we do, but if you look in that green box to the left at the top, what you've hired us to do is express an opinion on your financial statements. If you look at the top right box, what that opinion is we're giving reasonable assurance. We're not giving absolute assurance, meaning that we're not looking at every transaction. There could be errors in your numbers, but those errors are not going to be big enough to affect the readers of the financial statements. So if you were to go to a bank and try and get a loan, those errors are not going to be big enough to change their opinion of the financial status of the city. And so that's what we are charged with to do as auditors. If we looked at every transaction, the cost benefit, it would just be increase the cost of an audit tremendously. So we look at samples, we test controls, we do different things to make sure that the financial statements are what we call materially correct. The state auditor requires us to do what we call a yellow book audit, and that's a government accounting standards audit. The blue box at the bottom is we have to look at internal controls a little bit differently when we do a yellow book audit. So in a regular audit, we can just gain an understanding of the internal controls and we can move forward. In the yellow book audit, what we have to do is we have to actually test controls. And some of the findings and things are a result of having to do those testing that the yellow book requires us to do. So at the bottom right, What that report requires us to do is talk about any findings or any things that we observed. We're not giving an opinion on internal controls during that Yellow Book audit. What we're doing in that report is talking about how we expand it above a regular audit and what were the results of our testing. And we'll finish off the presentation today talking about the results. So the next page is what were the results of our audit as far as giving an opinion. We have issued what's called an unmodified opinion or a clean opinion. That is basically the highest level of assurance that we as auditors can give. So our report talks about the financial statements being materially correct. And so, again, that is the type of opinion that the city is looking for. The next slide, there's two other reports that are included in your financial statements that are our responsibilities. The one on the left is that Yellow Book report I was talking about. And again, we're not giving an opinion on that report, but we're talking about what we do differently. And then we do have some references to some findings that we'll talk about at the end. The one on the right, because the city spent more than $750,000 of federal grants, you're required to have a compliance audit, or what we call a single audit. What we do is we have to, the federal government has laid out risk-based approach. So we go through and we look at certain grants. The bigger the grants, the more risk they are. And we have to select grants and make sure that we're meeting the compliance requirements that those grants have. For example, we could have eligibility requirements. We could have reporting requirements. So the ones that are applicable to that grant, we have to go in and test and make sure that the city is complying with those requirements. We are giving an opinion on this particular report. On this report, we're giving what we call an unmodified opinion. Again, the highest level of assurance we can give, but there is one matter that we'll talk about that we did note during our single audit testing. So we do have one issue that we do need to address. But the end result is we give an unqualified opinion. If we go to the next page, we are required as auditors to talk about if we have any difficulties encountered during the audit. And this year's audit was smooth. When we ask questions, the information is given to us in what we would expect in a timely manner. The records were presented to us in a good format that we could understand, and so we did not have any difficulties as we progressed through the audit this year. The next one, the next slide, I think is really important to the commission, because as auditors, if we're coming in and having to book a lot of adjustments, that should cause you some concerns on the numbers that you're getting throughout the year. Unfortunately, the state of New Mexico is different than what our standards require. So when you're doing your monthly reporting to DFA, when you're setting your budget, you're required to do what's called a cash basis of accounting. Our standards say that's not acceptable. We can't give our audit opinion on cash basis. So you have all your budget to actual statements and your financials are this basis of accounting. Well, we have to come through and we have to modify that to get it into what we call modified accrual accounting. And modified accrual is kind of like checkbook accounting. If we're going to get it in our checkbook close enough to year end, we're going to call it a receivable and an asset. So for example, property taxes, GRT taxes that we get within 60 days, those are assets that we have to show on that method of accounting. So what we have to do is we have to convert from the cash basis to get to our modified accrual. And then there's two statements in the financial statements that are on what we call full accrual, where we have long-term assets, long-term liabilities. So our debt are shown up as liabilities on those statements. Our buildings, our infrastructure, those are shown up as assets. So we have to make those adjustments. But again, the receivables, the long-term assets and liabilities are not to be reported to DFA, and they're not to be considered when you establish your budget and you're monitoring that budget throughout the year. With that said, the adjustments that we did have were to take it from the method that DFA requires you to our other methods of accounting that we have to present the financial statements. So what that would tell me is, if I was a commission, is the auditors are not having to come in and affect those cash basis numbers. We didn't have any adjustments that related to those. All our adjustments related to getting us to those other method of accounting that our standards require us to do. If we go to the next slide, we're supposed to talk about disagreements with management. If management said we don't like how the financial statements are presenting a certain issue, an accounting issue, we would have to let you know, but we did not have any disagreements with management, so there's nothing to report there. The last two slides are the findings portion of the audit. And as the commissioner mentioned a while ago, we did have some long-term findings that have been resolved. And we have different level of findings. We have what we call material weaknesses, we have significant deficiencies, and then we have what we call other matters. So material weaknesses are in essence the worst type that you can have. Those merit the attention immediately, they need to be dealt with. And significant deficiencies are also troublesome, but they're not as problematic as a material weakness. Other matters are a lot of times are just compliance issues, or just they're the lowest level of type of findings that we have. If you look at last year, we had 8 findings, and if you look at this next slide, 6 of those findings have been resolved. And as you had mentioned, you know, a couple of long-term ones, that first one, 2011-001, was what we call a material weakness. It was the worst type of finding that we can have. And with the addition of having Mr. Gaylord help and come take responsibility for your numbers. So our auditing standards require that the city take responsibility for your numbers in accordance with all of the GASBs that have been issued. So we have the Governmental Accounting Standards Board that sets all the rules that we have to follow. And there's some pretty complicated ones that even as a CPA are not straightforward. And so you have to have that expertise internally. This year, with the addition of Mr. Gaylord, you guys were able to give us the numbers and to give us all the information with that GASB, what I would call expertise. And so that finding was resolved, and again, that has been around a long time. If we go to the next slide, if you look at the numbers, the 2 findings that we have this year that carried over are only a year old. So the most outstanding findings that we have are only a year old, and we had 2 of them that are being repeated. So we have travel and per diem. The first one, we had 2 items out of our sample of 10 where we were not paying the correct mileage rate on reimbursements, and it netted out to $2.98 overpayment. But because of the state audit rule, any finding, whether it's a $2.98 error or it's a $1 million error, we have to report them in the financial statements. So this one is what we call, to be honest with you, all the findings that we have are those lowest level of findings. They're all other matters. And so that's the first finding that we have. The second finding is relating to para remittances. So this is a repeat finding from the prior year. And what the state auditor requires us to do is we have to go through and look at your payroll reports and make sure that we're remitting the correct amounts to para. Probably about 6 or 7 years ago this was added because para and ERB were both complaining we don't know that we're getting the right amounts, the right contributions. So they put that burden on us to go through and test them. The one problem we had out of all the payrolls was related to in July. So we had an overpayment of $114 that we did in July. All the other ones that we tested after that point in time were cleaned up. And so what that tells us as auditors is that the issue appears to have been addressed, and I would expect this finding should be able to go away next year. The next finding is cash disbursements. As I talked about, that yellow book audit requires us to do samples. During our testing of cash disbursements, we had a population of 40 items. 3 of those items, the purchase order was done after the fact. So somebody went out and made a purchase, then went through the approval process, which is a violation of your city policies and procedures. And so we just need to make sure, and to be honest with you, this is a very common one. We see it on, I would say, probably half of the cities and county audits that I do, we have this type of finding. It's because people need to go and make a purchase, and they just go move forward without worrying about what the proper requirements are of the city. So again, this is what we call an other matter. The next one is payroll disbursements. One of the things that came out during the audit, we picked 40 payroll. We had 24 items where we did not have the personal action forms, and so process needs to go and make sure that we're getting those in the employee files in accordance with the city rules and regulations. And so we're just not documenting the correct rates in the personnel files, and we just need to get those into the personnel files. The next one is Chief Procurement Officer. Again, this is a state audit requirement that we make sure that the city has a Chief Procurement Officer. There's required education that the state makes you go through, and you go get this done. I think you even have to take a test. and then you are designated as a chief procurement officer, so the city just needs to identify and make sure that we get somebody that goes through that training and gets on the state auditor's website as being approved. The next one is cash receipts. And now again, we're looking at samples. We didn't go out and test every single cash receipt system in the city, but 3 of them that we did test had issues. So the swimming pool, the library, and the golf course, the documentation that we're getting from those entities is not always the best. What we need to do is make sure, like at the golf course, we recommended getting a cash register or something out there, because we don't have a lot of people working out there to ensure that we have a Z-tape or documentation showing what the collections were. What was going on is we just got an Excel spreadsheet, and it wasn't within the time frame. The city requires that all deposits be made within 24 hours, and they were definitely not coming in within the 24-hour time frame. So not only do we need to make sure that we're getting those funds within 24 hours, we need to ensure that they are getting a little bit better support with a cash register, with a sign saying, you know, if you don't get a receipt, you need to question why and let us know. Actually, all 3 of these situations need to have that sign. The swimming pool and the golf course were the same. The library, where we're not getting those deposits within the 24 hours based on city rules and regulations, and we just need to make sure that receipts are given out at all those places. The last finding relates to the single audit. So I'd mentioned earlier, because the city spent more than $750,000 in federal funds, we did that compliance audit. When we were looking at some of the compliance requirements, not only do we have to look at are we meeting the compliance requirements, but we also have to look at what are the internal controls over those compliance requirements. And when we were testing internal controls, one of the reports that was submitted to, which department was it? Department of Agriculture, did not have the proper review and approval. So when a report is done, it's actually city policy that that report gets submitted to the finance department so that they can check that information and verify that it's accurate before it gets submitted, and that step was just skipped on this particular report that we selected for testing. With that, I'll open up to any questions or...
Thank you, Chris. Any questions from the commission? I'm ready to call Commissioner Clark here, and there's nothing there. Commissioner Ashton, do you have something?
Yes, Commissioner Clark and I changed places this time.
Oh, okay, I should have corrected. You did throw me a curve on that one.
As I noted, I think this is a very good audit, and I appreciate the efforts of the city and the city manager, but they're not perfect, and I don't want to cast any shadows. I have a couple of concerns. One of them is the accountability of cash receipts. I'm hearing your recommendation is that we have cash registers at various locations around the city, and that they should be X'd and Z'd out at the end of every shift. That money on a daily basis should be receipted at the city office.
Yes.
And that hasn't been done.
Correct.
Okay, that absolutely needs to be done. The other question I guess I have is in the area of lodger's tax. Did you review that and see how it's accounted for? Do we have spreadsheets? Do we know how the hotels and the motels are providing the information on how they gathered their taxes? Is there a check and a balance, and how do we get past that?
So you're testing my memory. I am pretty sure during our cash receipts that we did select a couple of lodger's tax. But all we do and all we're responsible for is we just took the information provided by the lodgers themselves and made sure that what they said they gave actually got recorded into the bank and into your accounting system. We did not go out to the lodgers and verify, is the information in that report accurate? That is something that can be done by city personnel or the auditors as what we call an agreed upon procedure. And so that's on top of a regular audit. We're not required to go out and do that, but there is city ordinance that allows that to happen. But that did not happen in this case.
Thank you for answering my second question for me ahead of time.
Okay.
And so I would hope that the city does go forth and provide those checks and balances with our lodgers. community to make sure that we're getting what we're supposed to be getting. It's just a pass-through fee for them anyway, if I'm correct. And so they're just collecting the money for the city. So it is our money, and we should be doing everything we can to make sure that we get that money.
And that is something that we do. I've got 2 other municipalities that in the next month that I'm actually doing those larger tax audits for them. So that is something that is regularly done throughout the state.
Thank you, sir. That's all.
Manager Fuentes.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, and I think as Commissioner Heschler pointed out, I do want to commend the work that you all did in identifying some of the issues that we need to resolve. Of course, nothing is perfect, but one thing I can tell you is our staff has done an excellent job under the leadership of Melissa, and that role right there where Melissa's at, you got Sonia, you got staff, Paige, and of course, Mr. G, and we have from the utility office as well. I think they've done an excellent job. One of the new positions that we'll be having, and I think it's sitting right there, hopefully with us right now, is an accounts receivable position to address some of those issues that we see here. And I think that's as we move forward, I think identifying what do we need to do, and because we are required more and more from the state to meet higher and higher standards, we do need to provide the resources and personnel to be able to address these things. So I'm very optimistic that we're going to be moving forward pretty soon and have that position filled so that we can start addressing some of these things for next year's audit.
Right. And just to comment on that, this year when we came in to do the audit, the fund balances and some of the expertise that Mr. Gaylord, I almost said Mr. G, but Mr. Gaylord provided. Oh, yeah, I didn't realize he was here. The audit went a lot smoother because of that. So getting the fund balances, the previous audit, I can't tell you how many, we probably spent about 80 hours trying to resolve issues that, should be honest, should not have been an issue at all. This year we went in, those numbers were right there, we were able to get started and move forward. There are millions of transactions that go through this city, and you are going to have findings most times. I mean, it's more unusual to have an audit with no findings than it is to have one that has something. I think the key for the commission is we had some old findings and they were finally dealt with, and that's what I think you really should focus on, is the numbers are the way they are so you can tell when did that finding originate. And what you want to see is you want to see 1 to 2 year old findings, because sometimes by the time the audit's done, we got a finding, too much time has passed because we don't get the final audit until January, 6-7 months into a year. So sometimes there's situations that you just can't resolve until the next audit. But to see audit findings from 11 and 12, that should cause you concerns. But this year, just seeing findings from the last 2 years, seeing 6 of the 8 resolved, I think that should show that the city is working towards resolving these issues and has made progress.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, if I might be able to make a comment?
Yes.
I just wanted to clarify that since the cash receipts problem was brought to our attention, and we do handle the accounts receivable right now, cash registers have been put at the places. The standardization of the documentation has been completed, and we ensure proper receipt within 24 hours of all the cash from those departments that were trouble, and any other departments, including solid waste, all the departments that we receive money in from daily. So we are very confident that this has been taken care of at this point, and should not be a finding next time.
Excellent. Commissioner Clark.
Yeah, Mr. Garner, could you and maybe City Clerk Canton talk to me about the accounts receivable, and you too, Manager, because being on a cash basis is one of my big pet peeves with being in the city, and they've heard it ad nauseum from me. But I'm hearing that there's more responsibility in accounts receivable, which would be the accrual method of accounting, obviously.
Right.
But to have it being done on a consistent basis throughout the year, even though it's not what we report to DFA, is still something extraordinarily important for the city to know that, we're 6 weeks behind or 6 months behind on receiving something. And how do we go about it, knowing that it's not a requirement, but it is something that the auditors put together to do at the end of the year, but it would be good to have on a daily basis or even a weekly basis when you're running a city to say, I'm $20,000 short. Well, it's right here, let's make a phone call, or something like that. So if you could talk to us a little bit about, your thought about putting this receivable together. And thank you, Ms. Canton, for the efforts that you're making on that cash basis. But expand on it a little bit for me, please.
Just because you don't have to get those items recorded in your general ledger doesn't mean that there can't be accounting for them outside of the general ledger. So that's one of the things we looked at when we were trying to determine which receipts to look at. We had a population of here's what we should be getting, and that's when we picked our samples of what we are getting. So what can happen, and we talked a little bit about this with the clerk's office, is making sure that we do have somebody that is, following up and ensuring that when we've got like a tower that we should be receiving on a monthly basis for rent, that we're doing that. So we won't record those entries in the system, but somebody can track that outside of the system and ensure that we are properly getting the rents and revenues in the doors and following up when those aren't being taken care of. And I think there's some procedures that were being established to do that. What happens is we don't come up with the numbers at the end of the year. Actually, your staff will, at June 30th, come up with what are those receivables, what are the property taxes, what are the GRT taxes, and then we audit those numbers. It's just that the way our state is set up, they're not required to do it on a monthly basis. They just have to do it annually for the audit to give us those numbers. But the truth of the matter is those can be monitored throughout the year without any problems. We just don't want to record those in the system until the actual receipts happen.
So you would recommend to this municipality that we track those throughout the year and not wait until June 30th, correct?
Correct.
And Manager Fuentes, you're putting the system into place?
Well, that's correct. And as I mentioned, I think the key here is with the new proposal of the accounts receivable, which would be under the office of the utility office. Right now, Sonia and Chelsea are actually working towards kind of, developing that along with Melissa, so that it's not just the daily receipts that we receive on a day, it's also about the contracts that we have in place out there. It's also about impact fees or anything else that we deal with that we know is revenue coming in, so that whenever there is a shortfall or something out of the ordinary happens, and the commissioners have questions about, well, what's going on, at least we know we have somebody that can track and give us at least some sort of an explanation or research it. Which also, for example, to Commissioner Heschler's question of lodger's tax, we are required to also do audits, and that would be part of a responsibility that we could task that person. So it's a new position that the city has never had, but it's something that we've been working to with staff, and it will be under the utility office. So all collections will be processed through the utility office.
That's an excellent idea. Absolutely excellent.
And during the audit, we did have lots of discussions regarding this with not only the finance department, but also with the city manager. And so, yeah, those discussions were going on during the audit time frame.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Any other questions from the commission? I'd just like to thank you, Chris.
Sure.
As always. I wanted to thank, number one, Manager Fuentes. This has been a concern of this commission for many, many years, is to clean up, quote unquote, our books. And get rid of some of the things that have been hanging over our head and killing us. And obviously Manager Fuentes heard, and I want to thank for helping deliver that Director of Finance, Melissa Torres, and her team members. You're making us look good. And that's what we like to do, and we want to make you guys look good. So thank you very much for your efforts on all our behalves. It was great. So thank you. The next item is going to be a presentation, a discussion. Not quite sure if there's going to be action, but we will find out. Planned expansion of transit service to Sierra County. We're going to have two presenters. Our first presenter is retired Mayor Pro Tem of the City of Las Cruces, a friend of mine, Ms. Sharon Thomas. And then she will be presenting David Armijo, who is the Executive Director of the South Central Regional Transit District, and I've had the pleasure and still do have the pleasure to represent the city on that board down in Las Cruces. So, Mayor Pro Tem Thomas, it's yours.
Okay, thank you, Mayor, and members of the council, and the people of the audience. So I just want to say, I did give all of you a handout that has most of this information. It's not the PowerPoint, but it has most of the information. And it is unfinished business because, of course, we moved in a totally different direction in the last couple of years. And so I just want to give you a little background on what's happened. So as you know, probably so I just hit the button in the middle.
One of the arrows, actually, is the right.
Pardon?
The right arrow?
The right arrow? Ah, okay. So there are 4 districts in New Mexico, and there was state legislation in 2003 that allowed any 2 entities to put together a transit district. And so currently there are 4 of them. There's the North Central blue one, and the green one is the one around Albuquerque, and the one over in the corner at the bottom is the Southwest, and we're the South Central Regional Transit District, and we're Doñana, Sierra, and Otero counties and the communities within. So we have a mission. We've just been rewriting our 5-year plan, and so our mission is to strengthen communities, facilitate economic and educational activities, and promote health and safety through safe and efficient regional transportation services. So back in 2014, we had a starter bus service. You remember that. Some of you, we did have some buses that came up here. It was based solely on what had been collected so far in membership fees, so it wasn't very long-lived. It wasn't enough money to carry on much further. We didn't have an executive director, and the referendum failed. I think it was 57 to 43 or something like that. That's pretty typical for the first time out on a transit referendum. They often do not pass the first time. El Paso's, theirs passed on the 3rd time, for example, so it's not a lot different than what you see in other communities. So in 2016, by then, we had some increased funding. We were able to hire an executive director, David Armijo, who will speak to you in a few minutes. He has 30 years of experience with transit service, so he came highly, highly qualified. We only had enough money to actually do service in southern Doñana County, so at the moment, there's service from Las Cruces and south. That's the highest population, so that's where we had to start with 5 bus routes. And they go through Anthony, Chaparral, Sunland Park, Alamogordo. Last year, David was able to work with Sun Metro and the city of El Paso to make connections to both on the north and the west side of El Paso, so that's had quite an impact on ridership, and especially for Chaparral, which is kind of that little isolated community out there north of El Paso, doesn't have very many connections. So we've had a number of successes in the last couple of years since David has been here. So we do have a 5-year plan. It's required by the New Mexico Department of Transportation. It was approved by them. So we've already met 17 of the 22 objectives that were in the 5-year plan, so we're quite well ahead of schedule. And in fact, we're updating the plan right now, and it's just about done. It's going to come before the board soon. The ridership has more than doubled. We're approaching over 30,000 trips annually. The New Mexico Department of Transportation does an audit, and when they audited us last year, they ranked us number 10 of 22 rural transit providers in New Mexico. They give grades to the funding application. We got an A. We got the highest possible grade. They really liked the way we submitted our funding applications. And they also look at the ratio of administration to service, and we got 3.34 on that, and they only allow up to 0.50 for a transit district of our size, so we're well within the range of where we should be. We like to compare ourselves with the North Central Regional Transit District because it's also very rural like we are. And if you look at this map on the right, right in the middle is Espanola, and that's where it started. And you can see through routes they've initiated and work they've done with other communities and other providers they contracted with, and how much they've grown that whole system up there and connected all these little communities that before were not connected. And they have received considerable national recognition for what they've been able to do. So it's growth and it's consolidation with other systems. It's putting everything, also everything works together, it's on the right schedule, so you can get from one system to another. And we're on the same trajectory. When they were in their second year, they had about the same ridership that we have, and that was in 2004. So now it's 14 years later, and their ridership is now over 500,000 trips a year. So it takes a while to grow a transit district. There's lots of negotiating and working with other communities and getting right-of-way and signing MOUs and all that stuff. Then sources of funding. So we're funded by membership fees, and that's 50 cents per resident, and that pays for the district activities, so the things like regional planning and doing the 5-year plan and applying for grants and working with all these other entities, you know, connecting with other systems. That's the kind of work that the membership fees pay for. Then the services, most of the service, or all the service right at the moment, is in Doña Ana County, and so Doña Ana County pays $350,000 a year for the service, and that's part of, most of it is provided by this district. There is a contract with a provider out of Alamogordo that comes through Doña Ana County. We just contract for them to make a few stops in Doña Ana County because they were coming that way anyway. So then there's state and federal funding. So you use the local funding, of course, for match for state and federal funding. So for to date, we've brought in $974,000 and it's $216. The CARS local matches. So the federal money now currently makes up 60% of the budget. And we expect to receive more this next year, well, over 500,000. And some of that includes funding to come up here into Sierra County that the Department of Transportation is interested in doing. Of course, there's wait a minute, that was on this page. So, as I said, the federal funding comes from gas tax. So we get it through the New Mexico Department of Transportation, but it's really federal money, and they decide where to spend it around the state. And if we don't apply, then it goes to somebody else. So, you know, this is our gas tax money, so we'd like to have it come back to our area, not go someplace else. And then it goes, all this funding goes into the local economy. So we have 7 bus drivers, a dispatcher, a transit supervisor, executive director, and we have contracts with a lot of businesses that do things for us. So that, you know, where we buy the gas and oil, who does the maintenance and repairs, who houses the buses and cleans them every night, office supplies, graphic design, advertising, printing schedules. So that money goes back into the community. So with most studies that look at what the local economic impact is, say that for every dollar you invest, you get $3 to $4 in economic return. So, you know, for example, our fiscal agent is the South Central Council of Governments up in Elephant Butte. That pays for one of their positions, for example. Other benefits, of course, have to do with other things. Health, we were part of a big health impact study last year that came out of UTEP in El Paso. So, and we work closely with La Familias we stop at all of their medical centers, so it helps people get to appointments. We added to the route a stop at the grocery store in Anthony, Texas, because there's no grocery store in Anthony, New Mexico. So, you know, being able to get to groceries, less pollution, fewer traffic injuries. Buses are safer than cars. Physical fitness. If you're a transit user, you get something on average 17 minutes of exercise a day, and the Center for Disease Control recommends 22 minutes, so, you know, it's close. Then there's, of course, the millennials. We all try to attract the millennials, and the companies that they work for. Millennials are real high on public transportation, you probably know that. More than half said that they would consider moving to another city if that city had access to public transportation. Or they also said that high-quality transportation is a top factor when they're looking for places to live. And so currently Denver's the hot spot. They put in all that rail and that. As soon as you put in rail, then you get a lot more bus programs that connect to the rail, and that's where the millennials are going right now. Money, you can save money, so this helps a lot with housing. And I know that I looked at your affordable housing report. You know, we look at what the housing costs as part of an income, but the next highest expense is transportation. And so, at least in Doña Ana County, people go out, they could go where they can afford to buy the house, then they can't afford the second car to go back and forth. And so the estimates are that you save $6,000 to $9,000 a year if you can get by with just one car, and then that's more money you can spend on housing. So the Housing Plus Transportation Index, and the U.S. Department of Transportation initially, maybe 1 or 2 years ago, started doing that. And then there's this aging population. So you have an aging population. Your median age is 52.2, and I think the state is 36, so it's just under 40. So you have much larger aging population, and you have a large retiree population. And do you have an ARP group here? Do they come and meet with you or do any presentation? So you know, they used to talk about, oh, we want people to age in home, we want them to be able to stay home. They've changed that view now to saying we want people to age in place. We want them to be able to, if they need transportation, to get to the doctor, get to the grocery, get to the the senior center. So that's their big push now, and they're asking communities and cities and counties to apply for this sort of healthy communities approach that they're trying to push for the senior community. So the other thing that we do finally is that we rate areas based on a transit needs index. So you take things like the age of the population, how many people don't have cars, poverty, you know, all those kinds of things, and you add them together in a formula. And when you do that, this area comes out with very high transit needs. So Elephant Butte and Williamsburg, they both, that's the left and the right, score in the critical category, as bad as it can be in terms of needs. And Truth or Consequences is just one level below, and that's the major transit need. The lighter pink ones are what the national average is. So that's how we compare. And I'd like to introduce David Armijo. As I said, he came here with 30 years experience. He grew up in El Paso and has relatives in Las Cruces, is committed to this area, has moved here, wants to, when he gets this all done, wants to retire here, and so he has quite a strong commitment to our community and our well-being, and I'd like to introduce him to talk about the Sierra service.
Thank you.
Here's the button on the right.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm David Armijo, Executive Director. I only have a few slides, so we'll kind of move towards the closure, but what I want to talk about today is more focused on where we are and where we're going relative to services in Sierra County. I think it was good to have the background update. We can see that over the last decade, these 4 regional agencies have been growing across the state, trying to bring services. I think what I really want to focus on here is one of the most critical elements that we're trying to do is connect services. So if we look at our services in Sierra County, which we're going to talk about today, and we look at our services in Doña Ana and Otero County, we try to connect to the services that would be in El Paso County and elsewhere. So some of the things that we're trying to do now is Sierra County, for example, with Williamsburg, Elephant Butte, and so on, and TRC have been waiting a long time, certainly since before 2014, to get some kind of transit services. We appreciate your being a member. I also want to mention the fact that each year we do have membership with our 9 members, and that includes TRC and the folks here in Sierra County, not Sierra County itself, but the cities within the jurisdiction. Those fees are generate a little over $100,000 a year in resources to the district. They are used then to match to our local grants. The fees are actually determined based on population at 50 cents a person. So we actually put a price on your community. but that brings in money. What we've talked about before has been a huge amount of money that's been lost. Over the last 10 years alone, Doña Ana County, Sierra County, and Otero counties combined, by not participating in the 5311, just one grant program, have lost $4 million to the region, $4 million. So those gas tax monies, when they come to the state of New Mexico, they come based on your population, they come based on your actual transit services. So a city like Las Cruces has 5307 funds, which is another grant, and they get those funds directly, and it's controlled by their local MPO. Our funds here are then controlled by your RPO. If the state of New Mexico, which gets the money for the population out of the each year's apportionment from Congress, the money comes in. If the grants don't get expended in different parts of the state, then the money stays within the capital, and the governor will determine where that money goes. And it's going to go for good things. It'll go for highway and roads or something else, but it won't come to the local communities. So that's something that has been lost in this process over the last 10 years as we've had meetings and discussions. So when we don't submit or don't go for a program, that program funds will be spent, they just won't be spent in your community. So your gas tax monies will not have a return on investment to the local area. And that's a little bit of what Sharon Thomas was talking about. What I want to talk about today is we've been working for 2 years to get a transit route up here into the area. And the funds we're looking for are funds that would match with the 5311. So when we talk about that state grant, although it's federal funds from gas tax, it's done on 2 steps. It's done on an 80-20 return, or 80% of the money for administrative or that vehicle you see is paid for by the state, 20% local match. And the operating cost is 50% local match. Now the route that I'm going to show you in a minute will be shared because the route will actually come in from Doña Ana County to Sierra County and Sierra County back into Doña Ana County. So it gives us a great opportunity for Sierra County because it's a shared resource. So the cost of the service is shared by Doña Ana County, and the cost is shared by what the state would make. If you break it down to what I'm trying to get to is you're paying about 25% on the return on investment. So that would be made up from those membership fees. So we're not looking at asking for additional funds, but we will be asking for participation of all the members, and we hope that we'll be able to get Sierra County also to join in on that, and that would help us with the financials. What I'm showing you here is that we're also looking at smaller buses. We had a couple meetings. I've had meetings already in Williamsburg. Appreciate we're having this meeting here today. It's good to get feedback. We submitted the grant in last year. I know there was a comment earlier on that. Unfortunately, the timeline for grants, as we all know, is not necessarily what we want it to be. We were dealing with this grant last spring and summer. The grant process came through the local RPO back in December, which was late. Usually that's done in November, even as early as October. So the process moves forward. The funding doesn't start until October 1st of this year, going into the next year. But however, there is room, as I will show you in a moment, the route for modifications and changes. What I do want to show you is one of the smaller buses that we're using. We have 3 different sizes of buses that we're using in the district and the region. We see this one to be a smaller vehicle, probably about a 22 passenger, or not 22, actually this is a 14 passenger we're showing here, probably 14 to 22 at the largest, and something around a 20 to 22 foot bus. The stop system could be directed as what we would call a fixed route, or it could be flex service, which is an on-demand where people would actually call and we could do some route deviations. We'll talk a little bit about that. The stops will be available, marketing, customer outreach. Service is still Monday to Friday right now. We're not yet introducing any kind of weekend service. We're actually staying with a regional price proposal. We're using Roadrunner as our baseline because it's the largest system in the region. So the fares would be $1 for regular fares and then 50-cent discounts for seniors, children, students, and people with disabilities. I don't think you can see that too well, but basically this is the historic route that's been out there. This route could in fact change, but what it does show you is it would operate through with stops in Elephant View, Williamsburg, Truth or Consequences. We expect it to come down and making stops as you come into Doña Ana County. You can see the very northern part of the bottom box would be, I think that's Garfield, then it would have a stop in Hatch and then on into that area. When I met in Williamsburg, we had talked about the possibility maybe we just do a starter route up here, like a circulator here in Williamsburg, Elephant Butte, and TRC. But it seemed to be the focus of the community outreach and discussions at that moment that people really want to come into Doña Ana for the universities and schools, and that we would try to accommodate that. Funding, as I just mentioned, would come from a federal grant, membership fees, the state, new bus funds. We had legislated gave us a bus, but that got vetoed. So we're looking for other options for where we'd have a bus to be used for this service. We have some time for it. The Sierra Veterans Home is asking for some support here to come into this area. And then, of course, we're getting a lot of interest in Hatch and elsewhere. Some of the things we're adding to the system right now, it's taken me longer. I've done this in 3 different places. You can see the little smartphone. We will be introducing a Google app within the next 30 days. We're in test mode for that right now. And what that means is that people would be able to use their smartphone or their website to do scheduling. And it would tell you where a bus is. Of course, if you're in Las Cruces, it's a little bit more interesting because it also shows you what the services are there, and it would help you to see what kind of connectivity you have. Also, we'll do that down in the area around El Paso. For Sierra County, we'll be looking at what we can do to connect to those services that are up further north to Socorro and elsewhere. The bus stops are going to be replaced. We have a very simple stanchion stop. This new stop here will be very similar to what we're going to have. What's important to it, it doesn't really show it here, but where it shows the number 13, down the bottom will be a series of numbers. Each stop has a number. You type in the number with your Google app, it tells you where you are. Of course, you kind of know where you are, but it tells you what time the next bus is coming. So it gives you that kind of information. So we're really moving into the, well, a little bit late, but we're moving into the 21st century on that. And that really concludes my presentation. This is a system map of what we do today. Very simplistically, we have our red and blue right in the middle between Cruces and Anthony. We go down to Semlin Park, and we now connect into El Paso. We also have Chaparral, and then the Oregon community, and all the way up into Alamogordo is our Otero County Orange route. Those 5 routes combined now carry just, we did about just shy of 27,000 trips last year. We expect to go over 30,000 this year as we go forward. Those numbers may sound low, but we're only carrying 33 passenger trips a day. So if you start to run the numbers, we're carrying about 5 passengers per trip, and somewhere in the area about 150, 165 rides a day on those buses. And those things will continue to grow. We're looking at expanding our services with what we're doing into the Oregon area and going up into Alamogordo with perhaps more service. And actually, we're working with Z-Trans, which is our contractor, to possibly run that service on Saturdays. Also working with Rio Grande Transit, which worked with us back in 2014, as possibly be the operator that would come into Sierra County and run that service for us, either coming through Hatch or vice versa. So that's pretty much it. I know we spent a little bit of time for you. I'm more than happy to answer any questions from you or the audience. And thank you very much for having us here today. We really appreciate the opportunity.
Our pleasure. And thank you for keeping Sierra County and Truth and Consequences on your radar screen.
Thank you.
Constantly. We appreciate that. Questions from the commissioners? Commissioner Clark.
Yeah, I remember when we tried to get this put through before, and it seems to me that, if I'm correct, we kind of missed out on some promotion, local promotion prior to the vote. Is that what happened? We had something like that. Anyway, so this transportation coming into Sierra County, would it be routes within Sierra County too, or is this just basically back and forth from Las Cruces to Truth or Consequences? And you said something about the importance being for universities and schools, where I wonder where the medical fits into that too, because I have a lot of friends, including myself, that go to Las Cruces for medical purposes, and you know, it would certainly be advantageous to not have to drive.
Well, and I kept that part of it shorter. When I come out, I expect to come out and do some community meetings, and at that point we'll have all the schedules and a lot more data than we would do here today. But in fact, yes, we would make numerous stops into the medical and community and whatnot. We hope to work closely with those community groups as we define the routes. We have, what I think we really need to do is 2 different things, but we have to go with what we have resources for. So yes, I think there's a need to have some kind of a circulator moving through the community in Sierra County. We also need to have a we call it cross towns, but in this case, cross districts. We need a route that actually gets you from Sierra County into Doña Ana County. That seems to be the feedback we've been getting both from the electeds and from community members. Whenever we go out, the number 1 call we get is, when are we going to have service to Hatch? The number 2 call we get is, when are we coming to Sierra County? So you're right neck and neck with each one. And so more people are interested in that. I had people, even in Anthony, in my meeting on the 27th of February, asking me about service to Sierra County and to add. So it's really interesting how people do commute around. One of the stories I tell is when we first started our service from Chaparral or Turquoise Line, which connects Anthony and El Paso. So I figured, okay, great, well, people going back and forth. I actually have an individual who goes to Alamogordo. And as I worked the way to get him to making the connections through 3 different lines, he had to come in Chaparral, Anthony, Cruces, and then Alamogordo. I said, you know, you're probably not going to make it back the same day, so that's okay, I have family. I'll come back the next day. I've had situations like that. Other ones were, and I rarely take a phone call on the weekend, but I noticed some woman called 3 times at Friday night, so I figured I'll give her a call. And it was for her son who had got a job in Anthony, Texas, by 300 feet. It's actually Mexico Anthony, the 2 Anthonys. They live in Chaparral, and she wasn't figuring out how she's going to get there. They had the 1 car, 4 or 5 people in the family going different directions. And I said, well, this is not the weekend. Oh, no, it's Monday. So I said, well, then we can get you there, and then you have to pick them up, so on and so forth. So we were actually able to find one of our routes that would actually get him there after school to a job, be able to work, and then they would pick him up in the evening when they come home. And so when we look at transportation, and one of the things that's really important on the Google app is we also hope to connect to things like Uber and other type of systems. Our goal is to help people get from point A to point B. Whether they're taking our service both ways doesn't really matter, whether somebody in the family picks them up. But for many people, without that one stop, they can't get there. We're doing that for a lot of college and high school students. One particular student who was not going to graduate from high school at Gadsden because family disturbance and issues, had to be removed from the home, and had no way to get to high school to finish the last few months. So it just worked out that we had the bus, we had to stop there, we had it removed, we put the stop back up within 24 hours, and we got her there, and she's going back and forth using the bus. There's 100 of these type of stories out there, but I have to tell you, all the communities here, whether it's Sierra County, Otero, or Doña Ana, have these type of situations. It's the onesie twosies that if you can just get me there, I'll find my way home. That it can be enough to make a difference for a lot of people. So,
Any other questions? I would just like, again, David and Ms. Thomas, thank you so much. I truly believe this is going to happen. There is a need. I'd like you to keep in mind when you're thinking about Sierra County and Williamsburg and Elephant Butte and Truth or Consequences, one of the biggest negatives that I heard from the riders, and this kind of dovetails off Commissioner Clark's question about medical, is you take the bus, our pickup was right in front of City Hall. Which is appropriate. We have shade there. We have a bathroom there for people waiting. So it takes a while to get down to Las Cruces. Then you have to go from that bus terminal to get on the Roadrunner, or whatever the local transit system is called, to get to your ultimate location. Doctors do not see people at the appointed hour. I sat yesterday, I was telling Mayor Pro Tem, I sat for hours in Dr. Leone's office down in Las Cruces waiting for him. So the last bus that people had to take to get back to Truth or Consequences was a 4 o'clock leave from Las Cruces. There was a later bus, but that bus only terminated, because I guess the driver probably lived there, terminated in Hatch. It's a long walk from Hatch to TRC, and I'm all for exercise. So I think that was one of the problems, because it was free to the public. So what about free don't you like, is why I personally feel we did not get the usage of the service that potentially could have been used because of the hours restriction, that you really ended up having an hour and 45 minutes down there. And I timed it once on a medical appointment to get to Memorial, and we literally had, my wife and I had an hour and 45 minutes. And we just made that 4 o'clock bus coming home. So that was a problem. But I truly believe that there is a need for this service. We will be we'll be going into budget hearings very, very shortly. The city, as other cities, have a lot of financial problems that we're addressing and dealing with. So as soon as you're able to possibly tie down something that we can bring to the commission, bring to management, and talk about real numbers on what exactly is this going to cost this community, that would be appreciated.
I think I can do that within the next couple of weeks. We're working on budgets like we all are, so I'm more than happy to do that. But I think we can stay well within our membership fee process and all that. And I think if we can do some things for this year and next year, I think we'll get where we need to get to. Thank you very much.
Well, we wish you the best, and we thank you so much. Safe travels home. You taking the bus home, or are you taking the car?
My bus.
Thank you. Your husband's here, Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you. Okay, moving on. The next item is number F, the consent calendar. I would ask that we pull out number 1, the City Commission regular minutes of February 14, 2018, since I was not here on that particular case, and Mayor Pro Tem ran the show. But I would accept a motion for approval of number 2, the accounts payable of February 2018, and the approval of the fiscal year 2016-2017 audit.
So moved, Mayor.
I have a motion by Commissioner Heschler. I need a second by Commissioner Clark. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. I need a motion for approval of the City Commission regular minutes of February 14, 2018.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the City Commission regular minutes for February 14, 2018.
I have a motion by Commissioner Heschler. I need
Second.
a second by Commissioner Clark. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Excuse me, I misspoke. Let the record show that I abstained. I'm just so accustomed to saying aye, it just came out normal. So it's 4 in favor and 1 abstention. Thank you. The next item is under G.
Excuse me,
ordinance
Mayor.
Yes.
Can you explain to Commissioner Baca why you abstained from voting on that?
Sure,
minutes?
obviously. Commissioner Bacher, I was, well, not to be overdramatic, but almost on death's doorstep. I was very, very sick. So I could not attend the meeting, and at the last moment, I called up Mayor Pro Tem, and she met with the city manager and our city attorney for our agenda review, and she ran the meeting. So if you're not here, you can't really vote on the authenticity of what is presented in the minutes. Although our clerk does a great job, word for word, we've been advised not to vote. So what would happen in that particular case is we pull that one item out of the bundle, vote for the bundle, and then do that item separately. Good question. Good question. The next item is ordinance resolution zoning, G1, discussion action resolution number 2917/18, the Open Meeting Act, and our presenter will be Ms. Renee Canton, our clerk treasurer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. It's been, usually the first meeting in July fiscal year will pass the Open Meetings Act resolution, and when we have a new commission, we've decided to go ahead and bring it back again. The Open Meetings Act is known as one of the sunshine laws, including the Inspection of Public Records Act, generally require that public business be conducted in full public view, and the deliberations of the public bodies be open to the public. So this is the resolution that's used to adopt this, and it's also the resolution that we can use to change the days and times of the regular meeting if the commission wishes to do so. So at this time, I'll open it up for any comments and questions from the commission, and if there are no changes or needs to move the meeting times or days, then we request approval of the Open Meetings Act resolution.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions or concerns from the commission? Commissioner Bacher, I know that you work for the school system. Is the powers that be okay with you having day meetings if the commission so decides to keep. Okay, very good. Just want to make sure you have good comfort level. Any other concerns? Then I will stand for a motion for approval of the resolution, please.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve resolution number 291718, the Open Meetings Act as presented by Renee Canton, our clerk treasurer.
I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead. I need a second.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Heschler. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, can we have roll call, Madam Clerk, please?
Honorable Steve Green?
Yes.
Honorable Sandra Whitehead?
Aye.
Honorable Ralph Hischler?
Yes.
Honorable Kathy Clark?
Aye.
Honorable Paul Baca?
Carries unanimously. Thank you. The next item is under I, New Business, discussion action appeal of resolution number 2417-18 for Eugene Kent regarding property at Lot 11, Block 76, original town site. Our presenters will be Mr. Robbie Travis, our building inspector, and Susanna Diller, our planner, GIS tech.
Mayor, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go outside.
Okay.
Yeah, I will also. You know, in fairness to Commissioner Baca, though, I know he's kind of stepping in. I don't know if I should maybe say a little bit about the procedure. You know, I can't actually address the merits of this.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. Okay, you know, what happened, Commissioner Baca, is that the City Commission adopted a resolution on February 20th, and that's part of your agenda packet. And what the commission determined as per the resolution was this particular structure is a dangerous structure. But what happens pursuant to the procedure is that the property owner is then served with a copy of the resolution. And if you take a look at the last paragraph of the resolution, he had then 10 days to file an objection to the resolution. And that's what's happened in this case. So we're here today to hear the appeal. And I have recommended in the past that the commission should use what's called the batter shell procedure, and that's the fancy term meaning that the testimony is taken both from the city side and also from the property owner side. And I'm recusing myself. I happen to live across the street from here from the property we're talking about, so I'll be stepping out. But that's,
Attorney Rubin,
yes.
before you step out,
Yeah.
I don't know Mr. Kent. Is he in
He's
the
not
audience?
He's not here.
He is not in the audience.
Okay.
Then how would you advise us? Do we proceed on, there is no appeal. He has given up that right. He had that opportunity to address the commission. Do we move to enforce the vote, our last vote, or does that just stand?
Can I, and again, I gotta be careful about getting into the merits, but I assume was he notified of the, of today's hearing?
Yes, when he came in and gave us his appeal, we notified him that it would be on the next commission meeting and he needed to attend it.
Okay. Well, I think with that in the record, I think I'm safe, you know, regardless of whether I have a conflict or not. I think it's safe to assume that he's chose not to attend, he's chose not to produce evidence, and therefore he's abandoning his appeal. And
Yeah,
I think therefore the resolution would stand.
So then
Yeah.
we can move on.
We did go by the property this morning, make sure nothing had changed, and to see if he was out
Okay.
or around there, that we could, you know, tell him, hey, you make sure and be here, you know, but he was not there, so.
Well, I think at that point, then I think you could make a motion to just to confirm the resolution and that the appeal's been abandoned. I don't know what else, what other conclusion you can draw with the fact that he's not present.
Okay.
Assuming he's been notified, which of course you say he has been.
Okay, just so the record shows, for the appeal for the resolution.
We're gonna stop that anyway. Go ahead. Any procedural questions that I answered?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll just be right back.
And Commissioner Baca, why they are stepping out, they have a conflict of interest. I believe Commissioner Clark has a property next to this property, and so does our attorney, so that we have passed rules of procedure that where there is a conflict of interest, for everyone to be able to talk openly without hurting people's feelings and things such as that. You not only recuse yourself from participating in the discussion, but you actually leave the building. So that's why they're outside. They're not being punished or anything like that. So I would just like the record to show that on the appeal for resolution number 24, known as the Kent property, that Mr. Kent was notified of this procedure, chose not to show up. Therefore, there are no proponents, there are no opponents who have signed up, And the only two people who signed up are Susanna Diller and Robbie Travis, representing staff. So with that, we heard the advice of council. I will stand for a motion.
I'll try to make a stab at it.
Okay.
Irene, if I can,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion that we go back to our meeting 2 weeks ago and reaffirm our decision at that point in time to compel Mr. Kent to clear his property of that structure, and want to uphold that decision.
Okay, I have a motion. Can I have a second?
I second that
I have a
motion.
second by Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead. Is there any further discussion? Madam Clerk, I don't need a roll call on this one, do I? Because we're not affirming the resolution.
Right.
Okay, so all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you. Thank you. Number two, City Commission Rules of Procedure. Our presenter will be our clerk treasurer, Renee Canton. And those of you who are following along, this is number I-2 on the agenda.
You took the opportunity to take a break.
Okay, lucky them. I wish I could have recused myself. Good. Sorry, so you want, let's just...
Do you want me to wait for a minute, or
Yeah,
go
let's
ahead?
wait till Commissioner Clark comes back. Since Commissioner Clark is taking a break, does anyone on the commission need to take a break for a minute? That would be the time to do it, or we could just chug through. I think it's pretty much chopped liver for the rest. And now we are on I-2, discussion action, City Commission Rules of Procedure. Our presenter is City Clerk Treasurer Renee Canton.
Okay, thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. Let's see, okay. As the Open Meetings Act resolution was discussed, the rules of procedures was also included in the organizational meeting for review, and it was also included in the commissioner and the new commissioners' binder of information that was given to them. Since there were no changes in the date and time of the meetings, the only change that we have proposed for this is the handout that I'd given you for item I-2 revised. And what we're proposing is rule number 18, voting under section A. Just a couple of minor changes, where it says unless otherwise provided by, it says statute, and it should be statute. A roll call vote shall be taken, and we're proposing to add in for final adoption of ordinances, to add in resolutions, and as it already states, to adjourn into executive session by the clerk. So with that, I'll open it up for any questions you may have.
Any questions or concerns? Thank you. Hearing none, I will stand for a motion for approval.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the City Commission Rules of Procedure as presented by Renee Canton, our Clerk Treasurer.
I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead,
Second.
second by Commissioner Clark. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carries unanimously. Thank you. The next item is a list of appointments, and we'll take them one at a time. Discussion action, appointment of JPC board members. Our presenter will be, again, City Clerk Renee Canton, and just for Commissioner Baca's edification, the hospital is owned by the four municipalities, Elephant Butte, Williamsburg, TRC, and then the county. We own 40% of the hospital, and Sierra County owns 40% of the hospital. And the JPC is the ownership board of the hospital, and that board can only be elected officials. You can't have private citizens on that board. There is another board called the governing board that is tasked with more or less the day-to-day oversight of the running of the hospital and those cannot be elected officials. Those are private citizens that each entity that owns a piece of the hospital appoints to represent themselves. So right now, we're talking about the ownership of the hospital, which is the elected end of it, called the JPC, the Joint Powers Commission. Sorry, Ms. Campbell. Go ahead.
Thank you, you just said everything I was about to say.
Oh, I beg your pardon. Okay.
But well, that's what I was going to add in, it's a Sierra Vista Hospital Joint Powers Commission.
Okay. And at the present time, we have Commissioner Heschler, Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead, myself as Vice Chair of the JPC, and Commissioner Clark is our all-purpose back, meaning that if one of us cannot make the meeting, that she is an automatic alternate. And that said, Commissioner Clark has brings a very strong financial knowledge to the table, and therefore, even though the three of us might be there at a meeting, we have asked Commissioner Clark to come because we want to tap into her knowledge. And she plays with numbers all the time and looks at a spreadsheet, and she knows it just like that. So I guess the question is, does the commission want to change any of the members assigned to represent the city of TRC to the JPC, or do we want to go with what we have right now? Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a suggestion that perhaps Commissioner Clark and I could change places. I would be happy to serve as an alternate, and I would intend to make every meeting. But because of your financial expertise and your contributions to the JPC, I think you should be a permanent member.
That is very generous, and I absolutely agree with you.
Or I could be an alternate.
Oh, no.
My place.
All right, heads or tails, Mayor Pro Tem? I'll flip the quarter. Well, since I heard from Commissioner Heschler's first, let's take that, and thank you for realizing the value of each other. We all have our own strengths, and we all have all our own weaknesses, and so I admire you for that. All right, so can I have a motion then that would make the representative of the governing board to the JPC of the governing board, which is the Commission of Truth and Consequences, myself, Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead, Commissioner Kathy Clark, and Commissioner Heschler as a alternate.
Mr. Mayor, I move to appoint the following to serve on the JPC board for the Sierra Vista Hospital, and the board should consist of Steve Green, our mayor, myself, Sandy Whitehead, Mayor Pro Tem, Commissioner Kathy Clark, and Commissioner Rolf Heschler would serve as our alternate.
Excellent. I have a motion. I need a second.
Second it.
Second by Commissioner Baca. Any further questions, suggestions, deletions? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Next item is appointment of the South Central Council of Governments, otherwise known as the COG or SCCOG, and the Regional Planning Organization, otherwise known as the RPO. And we're looking for a board member to represent the city. Presently, I represent the city and the treasurer on the South Central Council of Government, and I am the vice chair of the Regional Planning Organization, and Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead is my backup or my alternate if I'm unable to attend any of those meetings. So it's the will of the commission. Do you want to change? Do you want to keep it as it is?
Mayor, I would like to ask Mayor Pro Tem how she feels about the same position. If she likes it, I would move that we continue as.
I see that's fine unless somebody else would like to be alternate. It doesn't. Steve does a great job at serving on the board, and he's always available, so.
Thank you. Mayor, then I make the motion that we keep you on Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay, thank you. I have a motion by Commissioner Clark. Need a second?
Second.
I have a tie for second.
They have a fast learner over here.
Yes,
He's
yes.
younger and quicker.
Yeah, oh, there it is. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried unanimously. And Commissioner Bacher, please feel free, if any of these boards have an interest, that you have an interest in either transportation or regional planning or whatever, whoever is the representative, please get a hold of them and say, hey, can I tag along with you? I want to come to a couple of those meetings. These meetings are open, you'll learn, and believe me, I got enough meetings to represent the city on. If someone has an interest and really can do a job for this commission and this community, I'll be the first to step down. So please, take advantage of what there is to offer out there. The next item is number 5, appointment of South Central Regional Transit District member. You heard Mayor Pro Tem. By the way, Mayor Pro Tem Thomas is also a professor of transportation for the University of Michigan, retired. She really knows her stuff and has taught me a lot. I represent the city on that board. The problem with that board is, and I spoke to David before the meeting, they meet Wednesday at 1 o'clock, the fourth Wednesday. And because we have a long-winded member of this commission who has made these meetings, as Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead always reminds me, longer than they should be, and they normally used to be, we can't get down to Las Cruces at 1 o'clock. I mean, we're going to be out of here about 11:30 today, 11:15. You have to ride like a banshee. You know, it's just not working out. I do phone in. They have a telephonic call system, so I can phone in and participate, but that's not as good as being eye to eyeball to someone and seeing what's going up on the screen, etc. I think this position will become really important if they're able to deliver bus service to Sierra County and treat the consequences. So it's your will. I will certainly volunteer. I started with this board. I would love to see it to the finish, till we get that bus service running all the time, and then I can walk away and step back. I would love to continue to serve on it. I think it's important, as all our boards are, but if someone else would like to step up, come to a couple meetings, I'd be more than happy to show you what's about, and then step back. It's not drilled in stone here. So, anyone have an idea of what they want to do?
I would like to just leave it as such.
Okay, if you'd like to make a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move to reappoint Mayor Green to the Regional Planning is that the one?
That's South Central Region.
Okay.
Number 5.
Number 5 or number 4?
No, we're on number
5.
5.
We just put you on 4.
Excuse me. I move to reappoint Mayor Green to the South Central Regional Transit District member.
Okay, I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead. Need a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Clark. Any further discussion?
I have one comment I'd like to make, Mayor. This is something that, knowing that you're going to miss many of those meetings unless we let Mayor Pro Tem
They're
run the
going to change
meetings.
the meeting.
They're going to change the meeting if you get back on?
I'm working on it right now with
Okay,
her.
okay. I think it's very critical. I know. I love your meetings. They're so cool. Never mind, because then I end up talking too much. But I know that can happen. But it wouldn't hurt until they do change the meeting, or just a thought to find somebody else who's not a commissioner who does have some background on transportation to help you with that.
That would be interesting.
And it would be an outside
The problem
person.
is, I'm not quite sure that we are set up to have citizens speak for the commission and the manager and staff. And there are decisions and votes that you take, that I have taken on behalf of this community, that I felt comfortable taking because I was an elected official. someone who's not an elected official might commit
Encumber us or something.
might commit something that this commission and Manager Fuentes would get white hair on real quick.
Really? I got a black magic marker for it.
Yes.
Well, thanks for clarifying that position.
So the next item is number 6.
Did we need to vote for that? Did we
Oh, I
vote?
think,
Yes. I started talking in the middle before the vote.
We had a motion and a second.
Well, we had a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you. Last is 6, discussion appointment of Sierra County Tourism Advisory Board. And I put this on, and I wanted to speak to Commissioner Clark about this publicly. Commissioner Clark on the Tourism Board, I believe, represents either spas or lodging. Lodging. On the Tourism Board, I represent the art community, because my wife was the president of the Sierra County Arts Council, and when we formed this board, we felt the art community was part of the entire package. We wanted representation. So I asked Clerk Canton to put this on, because we have no representation, even though you and I are always looking out for the interest of the city. We have no elected official of the city of TRC on this board. And I really wanted to discuss that publicly, and to see if I'm going out on a tangent for no reason. I personally feel that since the city gives this board money, we work very closely with the board and the city on certain projects. I just realized that if I'm representing the Arts Council, you're representing the spas or the hotel industry. Who's representing the city of TRC?
Well, Ron would never show up for the meetings. I think we need to have somebody on there from the
Okay.
city. I mean,
I'm
that's a
glad you
really
agree
good
with
point, and Mr. Fuentes has enough places he needs to be
Exactly
all the
right.
time.
Exactly.
And it wouldn't make any difference to me who the other commissioner would be on there.
We meet the first Tuesday of every month at 9 o'clock in the Main Street office, which is right opposite the movie theater on Main Street. And I think it's important that we have city have a representation, a voice. So,
I think it's a great idea.
so would anyone, if we can't get no volunteers, what I would love to do is have someone just come with Commissioner Clark and myself to a meeting, check it out, check us out, the board, and then we can bring this back to make it official, or if someone wants to officially do that now. we can do it.
I just thought is, when we do get this new position filled, the tourism coordinator for the convention center and tourism, that person could be at that meeting also. Is that enough to represent the city?
That's going to be staff, absolutely.
staff.
I mean, and that person's going to report to Manager Fuentes. So he would be in communication with him or her. I totally forgot about that position. So what do you guys think about holding off right now until the city advertises for this position of event civic center coordinator, booker, and when they come on board, then they could really, if Manager Fuentes felt that would be good use of their time for an hour and a half once a month, then they could represent the city. Does that make sense to everybody? Thank you.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. So let us just postpone that, not to make a vote on that. And we canceled number 7. So the next item, thank you. The next item is discussion action, public forum, commission retreat, and fiscal year 2018-2019 budget process. We have talked about listening to, I personally feel it's really important to have budget, before you have budget hearings, to listen to the public, to listen to the citizens on how, in a beautiful world, how they would like us to spend their money.
even though we don't have a lot of money to spend. And then I wanted to go away on a retreat, because for just one day, we have a new commissioner, that when we kind of get together, sit down, talk, what's your vision, what's our vision, what can we do, work with the city manager, it would just be the six of us that would go away, and then we can talk about what we heard at the, I mean, I know about potholes, I know about cleaning up alleys. I would really like to hear from the citizens on what else is out there? What else, do you want from us? How can we better serve you? And then come in and do a budget. And I would request, and this is just me talking, and I'll try to be short, that the department head of each department be present. So if there are questions about their budget, their needs, whatever it might be, that the commission will have access to that person. So it would be public forum, probably the Civic Center, I guess the way we've always had it, retreat, preliminary budget. Commissioner Clark, you have a pained look on your face.
No, I think it's a really good idea, and if I remember correctly, it was when you were mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, that this forum started, and it was an excellent idea, and I think it's a mistake if we don't keep it.
Oh, I agree with you. I mean, the public, Mr. Fenn's right.
Well, it's their money that we're spending.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I guess if, Manager Fuentes, did you have anything else that you wanted to add?
Well, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners, and I know I sat down with Melissa and try to figure out a budget calendar,
right,
so that we could fit in the public forum and the Commissioners retreat. So if we want to give the public ample notice, and I'm looking at the calendar, is do we want to aim for the first week of April, which would give 2 weeks notice and coordination with everybody on a date, or we can do it sooner. But because we have to adopt the preliminary budget by the end of May, so we want to be able to, the sooner the better, so that we're not cramming everything. So we felt that 2 weeks notice for the public forum might be sufficient. But again, I just wanted to throw that out. That would be the first step, is establishing that date for the public forum.
So would that be, Manager Fuentes, after the next meeting?
After the next meeting,
So
which is, our next meeting is March the 28th, which would
Okay.
then be, the public forum would be the following week, if that works.
Okay. And that would be held at nighttime, as we've had it in the past?
That would be-
I think
We've
that would
done
be
it
the time.
before, but I can't, it seems
Oh,
like there aren't a lot of people that show up at 4.
Do we have a list of the available dates for the Civic Center?
I do. On April the 2nd, evenings available.
Could you tell us what day that is, please?
Monday, April the 2nd.
Okay.
Wednesday's usually out, right?
Wednesdays are out for me.
Yeah, no, we don't have
And Friday, April 6th.
Monday's good for me.
Yeah. And so we're not going to be bumping up with the pageant, Miss Fiesta?
The
Yeah.
Fiesta pageant is the 31st, so the week before that is all taken.
Okay,
So
so this
it'll be
is
over by
our...
then.
Okay. Well, I would like to start this sooner than later, and at least we'll have the papers, which we appreciate, gentlemen, putting that in. I'm quite sure we'll run a little PSA in both newspapers. I would like to hear a motion that we have a town hall meeting from, what'd you say, Commissioner Hart, 5
Well, I
o'clock?
think we've done 4 to 6 before, and it seems like, the 4 to 5 people are the ones that aren't at work.
Right.
But to, Mr. Finn's comment,
Wanna do it 5 to
if
7?
we go 5 to 6:30 or something, 2 hours can get a little grueling,
I am-
but an hour and a half might.
Okay.
Feedback?
All right, so, any other thoughts? So far, we would have a public meeting on Monday, April 2nd, at the Civic Center from 5 to 6:30, and we will also certainly make that announcement at the next City Commission meeting on the 28th, so that should give the public enough time. So if everyone is comfortable with that, I will stand for a motion, since this is under discussion action.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to move that we schedule our first public forum on Monday, April 2nd, to be conducted at the Civic Center from 5 to 6:30 p.m.
I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead.
Second.
I have a second by Commissioner Park. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you. Next item is the commission retreat. Now, I have not made the phone call to Catherine Wanick. I thought that was one option. Let me rephrase that. One option would be to go where we went last year, which I thought was lovely. And I have not asked her about the availability because I wanted to make sure that the commission was in support of going away for a day for vision, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, is anyone against that concept?
Sounds good to
Okay,
me.
so I would like then, how about, Manager Fuentes, how does the, because it's important that we all can get there at the same time and be up there. How does if we have the public forum, so we'll hear what the public has to say on April 2nd, what is your schedule, what does my fellow commissioners' schedules look like, either the early part of the following week or the end of that week of April 2nd? Anyone have any thoughts or likes or dislikes? Do you want to not do a public forum and a retreat in the same week? You want to kind of break it up, do one on Monday and maybe the retreat the following?
I think it'd be a good idea to keep them closer together so that the comments are fresh on our
Right,
minds.
yeah. And the following week, we might have, I don't have the calendar in front of me, we might have we would have a city commission meeting the following week.
The 8th, yeah, the 11th.
Yeah.
I just one other comment, I don't know about my other fellow commissioners, but have you all been up to the chloride area? Do you know what they're offering to the public and maybe a different place other than Hillsborough?
I don't know, I didn't check it out. It would be
It was just a thought.
a little bit longer drive. I don't know if they would have a building. I can check it out. I will
I
check
don't know
it
how
out.
anybody feels about that, but,
Okay, so I'll call Linda Turner
and see.
and find out what she has up there for us. Anyone have a calendar on a date that,
So, Mr. Mayor, if we are keeping it within the same week as a public forum, April 6th, which is Friday, and I don't remember if we did a all day, started in the morning, went through, so that would be an all day thing on Friday, April 6th, or the week of the 9th. If Monday works, as Mayor Pro Tem mentioned, Mondays works best for her, again, depending on the availability of the rest of the commissioners, whether it's the 9th or the 13th.
And we could even do Wednesday, the 4th, if we want to do it that soon, since Wednesdays are our meeting days anyway, so.
I'm flexible. I think this is important enough that whatever I have, I'm just going to cancel and be there.
Yeah.
So,
So
I'll have to check
I'll
my
work.
schedule, I don't know, but certainly any dates that are available, I'll do my best to. I will attend one way or the other, I'll make it, but.
and maybe, Mayor,
Are you
with that
gonna-
willingness of kind of coordinating, maybe if the commissioner can just let us know
Right.
the best date availability, and then we can kind of just coordinate it.
Okay, and I, in the meantime, I will reach out to Catherine Wanick and Linda Turner and find out what is available. And
What time would we be starting our retreat?
I would assume, I think last time we started at maybe 10, if I'm not mistaken, because it's about, to Kingston, it's about almost an hour's drive.
Right.
And chloride will be a little bit longer. I would think maybe 10 o'clock to 4 or something like that. So we're not driving in darkness coming home. And we can get a lot done.
If I can make a suggestion.
Yes, sir.
I think it would be a wonderful opportunity at that point in time to do some goal setting for the city as well as for the city manager, to see where we want to envision ourselves to be in 2 years. So
That's a
I
good-
would ask the commissioner and the mayor to be prepared to give us your best ideas for your goals for the community for the next couple of years, and then we can start that process and so we can put something together.
Yeah, and I like that. I was going to
Sorry.
No, now I know how Ms. Canton feels. I was gonna say the three of us have 2 more years up here, and I don't know what's gonna happen after 2 years, but certainly to come up with deliverables, working with the city manager, what do we want to do, what do we want to accomplish in 2 years? What do we want our legacy to be? And so thank you for looking on my face. Yeah, you did. Okay.
You're rubbing off on me.
Okay, so, I will make the phone call, get with the manager Fuentes, and then we will email, I will have Manager Fuentes email, well, I'm not asking for a vote, so I can do that. Email you all, and you say, okay, we could go here, we could go there, vote, and come up with the date, and let's do it. Okay, and then we'll have, presentations at the appropriate date on our preliminary budget with department heads here. Okay, I guess that covers that. I probably would need a motion for the retreat, to authorize the retreat. I'll make that motion, because it's probably going to be a little convoluted. Motion is that the commission will go away for a 1-day retreat, time and place to be determined by notification by the mayor to the commission and Manager Fuentes. That's my motion.
I second that motion.
I have motion second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye opposed? Thank you. Next item, and last item, reports, city manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Commissioners, just a couple of quick items. The impact fee study update project will have its first meeting on Monday at 4:30. Molson Corbin and Associates will be working with staff and the impact fee board to begin that process and update start the kickoff meeting for that. So they'll be underway. The project that Alonso Hill referred to regarding the sanitary sewer manhole replacement project on Veeder, yes, we did have some issues with an 18-inch clay sewer line that was replaced by the contractor. The state has been notified, and that has been cleaned up. So it has been addressed. And unfortunately, there was a resident that was impacted, and we're trying to work with them to make sure that any damages have been filed. So that has already been taken care of. Just a reminder that we do have the annual spring cleanup coming up on March 24th, and staff is still advertising it. Some of the notices, I believe, went out in the utility bills. So hopefully we'll have a good turnout then. Unfortunately, I do have some unfortunate news that we did receive our Small Cities Assistance Fund. Unfortunately, as other communities have experienced, we did have a decrease in our distribution of about $45,000 to $196. So Elephant Butte experienced the same thing, the county, and Williamsburg as well. So that's unfortunate, so we'll just have to address that in the upcoming budget cycle. The Colonias Infrastructure Board is meeting today. Our staff, Arnie and Tracy Burnett, are before the board requesting a waiver for our application for Cook Street Pump Station. So the reason for the request of the waiver, it's because we have I don't have that with me, yes I do. So we have 2 outstanding Colonias applications. I believe we just expended one. We are tapping into the other grant applications, which is another $750,000 for the wastewater treatment plant Phase 2A. They do require that we spend that money, about 50%. But as you all may recall, we had to postpone that project when the water table was too high. So we had to postpone it because it would have cost us even more money to dewater the site. So that kind of delayed our project, so which delayed our drawing down on the funds. We have a good argument. I think staff will be presenting that. So we're hoping that they do award us that waiver so that our application can go forward. We are looking at an application for the Cook Street and SCADA improvements. Our application is for $1.1 million. It's not uncommon for the board to award that amount of money to communities. So that was I'm out of memory. In addition to that, there's also an additional tank that we're asking for funding in the Cook Station. The governor has signed the $100,000 for the downtown road, and so that survived. Unfortunately, there were some projects that were vetoed, that, excuse me, it wasn't ours. So, in line with the commissioner's request, we are asking staff to give us some preliminary estimates on replacing the water and the sewer lines for the downtown roads that we identified. So we'll have to bring that back to the commission for just review and the possibility of funding it if it's feasible. And finally, commissioners, staff and I, we did have a meeting with New Mexico DOT on Monday, and one of the things we were talking about is the roundabouts on the northern end of town. But what they requested from the city is our level of interest, and I'm showing some pictures for partnering with DOT to landscape the roundabouts. And these are just, I want to show some pictures first of some of the landscape that are in other communities, and I want to show the design. So these are just, they wanted to know, is the city interested in partnering with DOT to landscape those roundabouts when they do begin to design them? And as you can see there in other communities, they have different features. Even though, for example, on this one, it's very nice art piece in the middle, but the state does have a lot more restrictive guidelines. So we might not necessarily be able to do this, but we might be able to do something as like this. You have different features that, there you have some desert, what appears to be some palm trees, and a marquee to the downtown, to the community. So that's just some examples of pictures that we've had, and they're interested in, again, if we want to partner with DOT, then obviously that's going to require some funding. So these are some other pictures of other communities, and I think our design mirrors this design right here. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, it does have two roundabouts next to it, but not the racetrack that you see there. So, yeah. Just wanted to see if you all were paying attention. So, as you can see there in these roundabouts, there is some landscaping. I mean, again, these are other communities. That's Farmsville, California, that has those two roundabouts. Not uncommon for, so there's an opportunity for us. There's that really nice one on Route 66 Casino in Albuquerque that has that balloon in the middle. Our design that we're looking at, whoops, not a memory. Let me bring that up because I like to share with you all of the, let me just go back, the actual design of what finally made it through with DOT. I think I'm using too much memory with these pictures. There we go. Okay. So as you can see there, that's almost the final design where the roundabouts are going to be for that one right there. That's by Smith Road, right? And then you have the over here, Old School Road. So those two roundabouts right now, they're in the, I think they have about 30% designed already, and they're going to be getting close to completion. They're hoping that 30% will be by May, and they're still going to have some public meetings, soon on that, and then obviously they hope to finalize it towards the end of the year. So as you can see, those are two big roundabouts it provides an opportunity for the city to landscape it, to really beautify the northern end of our city, and which, again, working with the state and working within their guidelines, we have that possibility there. On the one on the, well, let me bring up the other one since I'm out of memory there too. This is the third roundabout by Walmart, and as you can see there, now the state, when we were discussing this project, the first two roundabouts, which is by Old School Road, those are the number one, the first priority. And the reason for that, because it's a safety issue with the kids and people going in and out. So that will be the other project. The first two will be the first ones to be constructed. This will be a little bit further down the road, but this is also being planned and designed. So as you can see, there's another big roundabout and other areas that can be landscaped. So the question before the commission, if there is willingness to us to identify some sort of funding that we could use to partner with the state, we'd like to know that so that we can start that process now. Because they also have some funding that could be provided for landscaping, and that we want to be able to use that money, that's part of their grant funding, and add a little bit more from ours. And now's the time to do any infrastructure. For example, if there's going to be plants and require some watering, then obviously we want to make sure that the infrastructure is there to make sure that it's irrigated and so forth. So wanted to bring that to your attention, Commissioners, kind of get a sense if that's the willingness of the commission. Then we can come back at a later date and make a formal request and a presentation. But they really want us to kind of give them at least an indication of whether there's a will to partner with them on the landscaping project. And with that, Mr. Mayor, Commissioner, I don't stand for any questions.
I have some.
Commissioner Clark.
Yeah, my concern about the roundabout is versus the regular light at those particular intersections. I mean, these are kids. My own daughter has gotten in a wreck there when she first started driving, and it's dangerous. And my question is a roundabout safer, or are lights safer? And are we obligated with the DOT for the roundabout? Has that already been determined?
I've been Googling it. Actually, we're saying that the roundabouts are safer than the traffic signals.
Than the traffic signals?
And do we have, no, I think Robbie and Tracy. So, you know, and actually, from the studies that they've done, yes, it has determined that it's a lot safer. I think it brings, the speed to go around the roundabouts is designed so that people go down all the way to 15 miles an hour. And it is designed so that also there's enough room for the big vehicles, RVs, that go to the lake to have enough room to do that. So, and the other is that it really, from their arguing, is that obviously going through a roundabout keeps everybody's attention, as opposed to when you're sitting at a stoplight right away, you pick up your smartphone and start looking at it, and then all of a sudden you get the yellow light and red light, and you speed right away. So, you know, there's been studies that, you know, that it is safer. It is actually, this project was submitted for an award recognition because this is the first project that has 3 roundabouts, and they're not that common in communities in that sense. So this will be a model project for communities, you know, to kind of, so that's why it kind of gives us that opportunity.
Yeah,
But
I think it's imperative that we do something for
But
this.
in regards to your question of the lighting, they looked at all of that, and at the end of the day, DOT decided roundabouts was the best solution for the problems that we have there. And the reason part of it is because they don't have the resources. I think for some of you that might have attended one of the public hearings, you have Old School Road and Smith Road. If there's to be a direct connection, you have an area next to the Moose that is lower than the road is, so you're going to have to build that up, which requires property acquisition and requires designing, and they're not going to do that because that's not a state road. That would be a city responsibility. So with the funding that they have, and we're looking at, you know, I think it was quite a bit, a couple of $1 million is they've already possibly identified that, so roundabouts is the way they're going to go. And so the design is pretty much it.
Yeah.
They're still going to have some public meetings, but I think roundabouts is the direction they're going.
Okay, thank you.
Any other?
How's this going to affect some of these businesses? From what I can see, Sonic, Lakes, even Fast Stop, they're going to lose traffic flow themselves because people aren't going to be able to go in and out.
And that was when we had a public meeting, Mr. Mayor, Commissioner Baca, and that was discussed. And in regards to, for example, if you look at Fast Stop, one of the concerns that was brought up is, are you going to do away with that the long driveway? So DOT took that into account, and they're not going to remove that long driveway. People are still going to be using that. So there's still going to be access where people are going to be pulling off the road, and there we go. Let me get that. There we go. So they're still going to be able to pull off. It will give them access. The Citizens Bank will still have access there, and also through Old School Road. One of the major changes was done to this area by Blake's, and because you have that, we wanted to make sure that, you know, the original plan would direct traffic all the way to this far end to get into the shopping center, but because we have Blake's and all the stores in there, they recognized that possibly it was a good idea to kind of have kind of a major drive in and out of the shopping center.
So the one by the shopping center will still be there on that one?
That will stay there. That design is proposed to be there. So to allow that, and because it's already, there's an existing, it's not a road, but it is a major driveway, so it makes sense for them, okay, it's already kind of established, so we'll put it right there. So that was, you know, there is going to be some modification on, as you can see there, there's, you know, there will be some access to Blake's drive-through, and obviously through to the gas station, so there's going to have to be some modification in that.
How about a safety part of it, as in if they cut off that front driveway right there? Oh, I'm sorry. How is it going to be the safety with the people that walk through that parking lot if they cut off that front driveway with the semis that do drive through there?
Well, and all of these are designed, they're all going to have sidewalk and then pedestrian crossings in there. So all of that is going to be ADA accessible and so, and replaced. But there are going to be some cuts, for example, this driveway will no longer be there. So as you can see, but there's the others that will still remain there. In order for this plan and the runabouts to work, that's the way it had to be designed. It's important to note here that this line here is the actual DOT right-of-way. And a lot of the businesses in that area have developed their parking lots on DOT right-of-way. And not a lot of people, well, either they knew or they didn't know but there's a lot of area that the DOT has that belongs to them. And that's where they're trying to stay within. And one of the reasons why it might take a little bit longer to construct the project is because in some areas they're going to have to acquire property. And there's a process, usually a 9-month to a year process on that. So, and again, this could be a great opportunity even for those businesses around that area to also kind of contribute to how would they like to kind of see it landscaped, which kind of begins to, you know, force the unification and to kind of make it consistent, starting with those roundabouts and then going throughout the medians, throughout the rest of the city, going south.
So, a couple of points. First one is, you know, that the DOT's got the right of way. So are they going to condemn the property that they need in addition to their right of way that's been encroached upon? One, and two, I can see going into the Lakeway Shopping Center, but there's nothing in Lakeway Shopping Center hardly. And why didn't we look at a little further down the runway on the road that goes into Magistrate Court? Because that's another issue coming out of the school the other direction.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, I was just asking for landscaping. But the engineers did say they're more than willing to come and answer the more technical question. I just don't want to speak for them because I'm not the designer.
Okay, you got me with that. We want landscaping.
Yes.
You led that.
I think Manager Fuentes wants us to stick to the script.
We want landscaping.
Yeah,
But I can make that request for them to make a presentation.
I could be wrong, but I think probably more people committed to our community via exit 79 than 75. That's just a supposition on my part. And that would be what a table setter.
Yeah.
To have landscaped roundabouts, that's the first impression they get of our community. If we could work, if we're talking about partnering and looking for money, I spoke to Manager Fuentes yesterday when he showed me this. I said, boy, let's get that first median right over the bridge of it's just this big strip of nothing, and what a missed opportunity to have a feel-good feel as you drive through our community. So, Manager Fuentes, this is not on the commission agenda item for a vote, but I think you kind of have a sense of maybe what we're thinking, and
And Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, that's exactly, and there is no commitment, I'm not making a commitment, I just want to at least get the information and then bring it back to the commission. But at least I get it, I think there's an overall consensus that we're willing to partner, but the details and the funding commitment will have to come back. So I'll just go back, get more details, more numbers, and then bring it back to the commission with the identified funding source.
Dynamite. Excellent. Anything else, Manager Fuentes, on your report? All right, I'd just like to go back to Manager Fuentes, and you said that we got $100,000 for roads, and I want to tell you what happened. And this is kudos to our city manager. So we're up in Santa Fe, and we're in a ballroom of about 500 people. People who want money and people who give money. And the people who give money are really important. So they're like bees to honey. And all of a sudden, we have Representative Rudy Martinez, Representative Rebecca Dow, State Senator John Arthur Smith, and he's always a little bit on the negative side when it comes to finances. And he's talking to Juan, and everyone's talking about our ICIP and number 1 and number 2. And all of a sudden, John Arthur turns to everyone and says, well, the governor's not going to, she's going to veto anything that, number 1, is not shovel-ready, cannot be completed in 1 year. And she's not going to ticket these 1.5 million, it's just not going to happen. Literally, in the middle of talking, Juan, Manager Fuentes, turns to our elected officials and says, well, how about number 3? And they said, well, what was number 3? And he said, roads downtown. We have a Spaceport Visitor Center right next to City Hall, and that's a state agency. So you really are giving the city the money not only to help us, but to help Main Street and to help the area around LaBelle Johnson. And so I have to commend, I've never seen that done in the middle of a conversation. He literally just changed horses, stopped talking about 1, stopped talking about 2, and started talking about roads. And so when you see Representative Rebecca Dow, thank her. Martinez, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, did not give us a dime.
No, we did not have the resources.
And John Arthur Smith did not give us a dime. So Representative Dow did us nice. So I just wanted to tell that story because it was like being whiplash. It was just amazing. Okay. City Attorney.
I have the report, thank you.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead.
2 items. 1, thank you to all the people that got out and voted in all the municipal elections this last week, and thank you for re-electing me to my seat. I hope to do you proud. And another is I attended the casino night down at the brewery, represented by the City Chamber of Commerce and the Elephant View Chamber of Commerce. Had an absolute fabulous time. They did a fabulous job, and thank you to all the volunteers that participated and dealt cards and chipped numbers and did whatever. Fabulous. Thank you.
Excellent. Great report. Commissioner Ashland. No report. Commissioner Clark.
I just have a comment that I'd like to make, throw it out for thought, that we've made some progress on the storm drainage issues downtown. And I think it's a really good idea for a commissioner to kind of stay on top of that and not be looking at the public to do that kind of work, because I think that it's really important that we stay on it. And we'll really get a chance to see if we've made any progress at all when it hopefully does start really raining. But I'd like to just put it out there that, maybe one of us needs to pick that up and continue with it. And I'm kind of poking this guy over here because he does have a little background, but I don't want to put you on the spot.
I would love to.
So then I would suggest you talk to Manager Fuentes and get an update on, where we're headed next. Thank you, Commissioner Baca. That's very nice.
Thank you for volunteering. Appreciate it. We can get you some information.
He didn't have a choice.
Thank you, Commissioner Clark, for volunteering Commissioner Baca. Should have said it. Anything else, Commissioner Clark?
No, thank you.
Commissioner Baca.
I just want to thank everybody that did come out and vote and give me the opportunity to show you what I can do for this city. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll try to be as brief as possible. I will try to be as brief as possible.
Told us 11:15.
Yeah, three things. I'd like to read a letter that the city got. I believe it's been distributed to all of my fellow commissioners. To the city of TRC, we, the members of Fellowship Alliance Church, would like to thank you for the recent installation of a sidewalk, curbing, and pavement of Kruger Street adjacent to the church property. We are also grateful for the work crew who spent countless hours, often in sub-freezing temperatures, to make sure the sidewalk and paving were done correctly and on time. We realize that many projects are in consideration. We would like to express our appreciation for choosing this one and for a job well done. You ought to be praised for your service to our city and community. So I want to thank Don Armijo and his crew for making us look really, really good. I'm going to end on a high note, so I'm going to go on the low note first. You know, we've been nailed a lot of times because we don't do enough. There's no economic development going on. So we bring a potential investor to the community who's looking at Malco. And I walked the property with him, and I talked about this back in 2017. And we're walking the property, and the property has become our second collection center of garbage. And he literally took a look at me and said, "You got to be kidding me," and walked off. And I apologized, gentlemen's from back east, and I said, "Give us a second chance." So thankfully, Andy and Don got their crews out there. We cleaned it up. It was going to be a contained, just where the bowl is right now, for bicycles, for motorcycles, for ATVs, to have bumper cars, to have stock car races, where the old Malco racetrack was area. So what we did to protect the city, and these are not city staff that's dumping garbage, I can assure you, on that property. These are our own citizens. These aren't visitors who are on their way up to Denver who are taking their tires and dropping them off at Malco. These are our own citizens. So I bring the gentleman back a second time, and it gets a little bit better. And he leaves, very disheartened. And I said, "You know what we're going to do? We're going to block off this area. We're going to put telephone poles along Copra. We're going to do this. We're going to put a wire gate, a cable hawser gate on the access to Malco." He said, "Well, I'll think about it." He has promised me he's going to come back sometime in 2018. That's all he has promised me. He does not tell me when he's coming. He calls me the night before, and he says, "I will be there at 8 o'clock in the morning." I happened to walk up on Malco yesterday. Whoever owns the Gillette Trailblazer RV tire, I can show you where you left it. Whoever left the General tire, I can show you where you left it. Whoever left the Michelin XCH number 4 tire, I can show you where you left it. It rips my heart apart when this commission, this manager, and our staff worked so damn hard to do a job for the citizens, and they really don't seem to care. This gentleman is willing to, and he's got the money, trust me on this. He's talking about $1 million investment here in Truth or Consequences. That, I understand, I wasn't here when Malco was thriving, but that was a big deal back in the day, I understand. And it gave our kids and our adults entertainment and things to do. They didn't have to leave the community, and it was safe, and it was fun. And all I'm asking the citizens, if you know people, I'm going to ask Manager Fuentes to ask staff to put back those telephone poles which have been pulled away, so now they have access to that piece of property, to put those telephone poles back. I will call back east and tell the gentleman we are ready. Whenever he is ready, and to give us, if you only can go to the well, we're lucky if we get 3 times. We've had 2 times with this gentleman, and I don't blame him. And this happens to be a personal friend of a family member. And I feel embarrassed for myself and for the community. We're trying to make things happen, and yet we become our own worst enemies. So that's the downside. The upside is, and I apologize, at the last city commission meeting, I should have known this because it's my birthday. March 8th was International Women's Day. International Women's Day, March 8th, is a global day celebrating the social, economic, cultural, and political achievements of women. The day also marks a call to action for accelerating gender parity. The campaign theme for this year is Press for Progress. International Women's Day is a collective day of global celebration and a call for gender parity. The story of women's struggle for equality belongs to no single feminist nor to any one organization, but to the collective efforts of all who care about human rights. Thus, International Women's Day is all about unity, celebration, reflection, advocacy, and action, wherever that looks like globally or at a local level. But one thing is for sure, International Women's Day has been occurring for well over a century and continues to grow from strength to strength. In 2011, President Barack Obama declared March the month of the woman, and President Trump has signed that order in again, so hopefully it will be moving forward. Last line, and while we know that gender parity won't happen overnight, the good news is that across the world, women are making positive gains day by day. Plus, there's indeed a very strong and growing global movement of advocacy, activism, and support. So we can't be complacent. Now more than ever, there's a strong call to action to press forward and progress gender parity, a strong call for Press for Progress, a strong call to motivate and unite friends, colleagues, and whole communities to think, act, and be gender inclusive. With that, I ends my commission report, and I will stand for motion for adjournment.
I so move.
And I so second.
And I so say we are out of here, and thank you all.